So we're live? We're good, Paula? Okay, thank you. Well, welcome everyone. This feels nice to actually have some people look in some eyes, so thanks for showing up today. I wish to call to order the regular meeting of council on August the 17th at 3:30 p.m. Thank you, Ms. Fortune. 3:30 exactly. Council would like to acknowledge Ucluelet on whose traditional territories the District of Ucluelet operates. Notice of video recording, audience members and delegates are advised that this proceeding is being video broadcast on YouTube and Zoom, which may store data on foreign servers. Does everyone have the couple late items? 2 pages? Okay, thank you. And I would like to just switch around, put legislation in front of reports, if you don't mind, just for, that's going to be a bit of a meaty one, so I thought we'd get into legislation first, if you're good with that. So with those late items and the switch around, looking for approval of the agenda.
I'll move it.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed, carried, thank you. And adoption of the June 22nd Committee of the Whole minutes.
I'll move the minutes.
Second.
Any errors or omissions? Okay, all in favor? Opposed, carried, thank you. And adoption of the June 29th regular minutes.
I'll move those.
Second.
Any errors or omissions? Okay, all in favor? Opposed, carried. And lastly, the adoption of the July 13th regular minutes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Any errors or omissions? Okay, all in favor? Opposed, carried. Any unfinished business? Mayor's announcements. I just going to do a recognition that we obviously lost a long-term resident with Doug Komodo passing recently here, and he lost his battle to cancer. And I know probably when we go back to the Harbor Authority, we'll probably do something for him a bit more officially, but we just extend our heartfelt condolences to the family. Okay, public input. Opportunity for the public would like to make any input on anything going on in the community. Okay, and any comments regarding 12.3 regarding Terrace Beach cabins? If I'm correct, we'll have an opportunity for public input. Okay, so if there's anything regarding Terrace Beach, input there, I ask you to save your comments for at that time. There will be an opportunity for the public to make some comments at that time. Anything outside of Terrace Beach? None? Okay, thank you. Oh, and I forgot to give a shout out. It's Joseph's birthday today.
It is, yeah.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
You want to take a guess how old he is?
12.
He's blushing under the mask now. He's having them doing that, so. Okay. No, I got. Yeah, I will. Actually, it's not on here. Thank you. And Paula, just due to process, is anybody on Zoom or any emails for any input?
There's nobody wanting to speak at this time on Zoom.
Okay.
And there is no new emails and community input.
Okay, perfect. Okay, thanks, Marilyn. And correspondence items. We have a few.
Regarding 9.1.
Yep.
I'm kind of interested. They offered to give presentations to council. I'm kind of interested in that one. Is anybody? I will move that we request this.
I will second that.
Okay, well, perfect. Just a couple comments. Obviously, talking to Miss Monteith this morning, she kind of was very much in favor with this social procurement as well. I believe there's some training available, and I believe the fee was very reasonable. Was it $300 or $400 and able to access that? If you don't mind, Miss Monteith, put you on the spot.
Thank you. Through the mayor. It's I talked to Robert, who was the fellow in the letter. It's the same as the AVICC membership, which in our case is $274. So highly recommended.
So perfect. So full support from council here in a moment, and it's nice to hear that you're very supportive as well. So I'll just call that to question. So all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay. 9.2, just so you all know, I did follow up with Mr. Brash, and we're going back and forth. I know he doesn't want to come back with another delegation, so we'll keep you in check with that conversation. Well, we got 9.3. They're asking for support of keeping fish farms out of coastal waters campaign by Council of Canadians. Anybody like to make any comments about that? Okay. Obviously, we don't have any fish farms in our community, and we may all have our personal beliefs on that, but I think it's inappropriate at this time to make any kind of motions from council or support that letter. So, catching up here. 9.4, and any comments? I'd like to make a couple comments regarding 9.5, letter regarding recommendation to create Seaplane Base Road as a worker camp. I think it's a fantastic idea, but the reality is we currently have about a $900,000 grant in. Seaplane Base Road has an inadequate sewer line, so we put that in about 8 or 10 months ago, knowing that Seaplane Base Road is going to be possible futures for a lot of things in the community, but we can't do anything without proper sewer and water lines down there. So sewer is the big holdup without increasing any kind of capacity at the rec hall property at this time. So, am I missing anything on that one? No? Okay. And just a side note, I know that Director Cole or Councillor Cole here will be working at the ACRD as well. You have a West Coast Committee meeting. Wait, sorry.
Sorry, yes, on the 24th.
Yeah, so, and for those that may be listening, we're obviously looking at options at the airport lands for possible staff accommodations, as we know that we're busting at the seams in many different topics, but and I know that you'll be working on it. So thank you. Okay, moving along to information items. 10.1, improvement to pre-hospital care system. That one kind of, does someone want to talk about that one? Looking at you, Rochelle. Sorry, Councillor Cole.
I know that when you look at the root of the problem, as this letter indicates, if there were to be resources and funds allocated to improve pre-hospital care system, it should probably lie or go towards the pre-hospital care system and not fire suppression. It would seem to me that if we need more of those kind of resources, we would throw that money in the direction of those resources.
Right.
That's all.
Councillor McEwen?
I was just going to ask Councillor Cole if we should support this resolution. I wouldn't.
Okay. I had a yes on here, so it's interesting to hear your feedback on that. So, okay, well, thank you. We do have the professional at the table. Anyone like to pull any out? Obviously, with 10.3, we had a response back. There's a bunch of us smaller communities that are struggling again with emergency services, and I think there was a line there on page 76, second to last paragraph, which kind of told us to keep on applying for grants, and wishing us luck. So disappointing. Okay, any others? Okay, we're moving along to council reports. Councillor McEwen. Yep. One more what?
10.4.
No, if no one wanted to speak about it, we'll just move on. It was just for information. Did you have something?
No, I'll give my committee
Okay.
reports.
August 10th, there was a committee of the whole meeting regarding Lot 16. I attended that. And on August 12th, we attended a budget overview meeting with our chief financial officer, which was really enlightening, considering we're going into a new budget next month. Already.
September. How sad.
That's it for my meetings.
Thank you. Councillor Kemps.
And I also attended the COW meeting and the budget seminar, which was really a great wealth of information. Also, I just want to do a shout out. The USS PAC it's coming September pretty soon. It's almost September.
Really?
And the school is looking for some executive positions. So if anyone has any high school students that want to join the PAC, then we need some executive positions filled. So just putting that out there.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hoare.
Other than the cow and the budget seminar, I agree. Our CFO has the best comics for her budget seminars. Just saying. I also attended the Wild Pacific Trail Society meeting on the 4th. And just a heads up, there is the official opening of Spring Cove Trail on September 18th. And the AGM for the Wild Pacific Trail Society will also be on the 18th. So a lot of things happening that day.
Wow.
But they were working with the Uklulathot because they are going to do a dedication for that elder tree. So they were tied to dates. And that's it.
Thank you. Looking forward to that. Councillor Cole.
Excellent. Really nice to see live faces in here and not just be talking to the picture up there on the wall. This is awesome. We're actually going into the ACRD live starting again, hybrid live meetings starting in September. So that's exciting. ACRD meeting of late. There's another grant in. We know that we got passed by on the last grant for the trail. Another one pending at the moment. I did tour the sand group with the Barclay Community Forest, which was quite amazing, actually, seeing everything from the new technology. And we went to the site outside of town there as well. So that was.
Well, you went to both sites.
Oh yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah, it was a beautiful day too.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And back roads, we know that there's going to be conversation at the West Coast Committee level next week on that, as well as ACRD is again next week. I'm going to, now that you set the pace there about the PAC, I will also say that the elementary school PAC is in very large need of having some people come out and join our happy group and participate. In quite desperate need, actually. And I think the cow, the budget, I think that's about it.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, off to me. I think obviously been very busy in town with the backcountry, but I'll start with the low-hanging fruit. I did attend, because I'm the mayor of Ucluelet, proud to be on the Groundfish Development Authority. A lot of us do not know what that is, so I've asked the executive, Charlie, to do a presentation in October so he can speak to us just about the struggles the industry is having and what that Groundfish Development Authority actually does, and actually making me think perhaps we should do that at a Harbor Authority meeting. And we can have a bit more dialogue with him about it, and because it's been a very difficult last couple of years, and obviously Hake in general has been taking a big beating because there's not too many buffets open these days, so finding places for this product is very difficult. And in general, the hake fishery's been having difficult times finding fish in larger volumes to come in when they do the wet unloading. And Jennifer knows all this. She should be on the table for that one. And then, but the freezer trollers have been having a lot more success because they're able to kind of do more spotty fishing as opposed to the wet boats, and that's why I've never seen it before. But a lot of our larger groundfish fleet has been tied up for a large portion of the summer due to a lot of things, fuel pricing and markets, etc. So Charlie will be coming to us in the near future and doing a bit more of wholesome discussion about it. And in Backroads Country, obviously that's been a big highlight conversation these days. You know, I'm very supportive of what's going on with Toloquit in the backcountry. A lot of those people that are choosing to live there. You know, earlier there was a letter from a few groups regarding the need for RVs and trailers. From my probably 6 times I've been out there in the last 10 days, a lot of the clientele are not necessarily working in the area. I think there was 5 individuals that were identified that actually are working in the area, and I know that we are working trying to find them some suitable safe spot with electrical, sewer, etc. I'm not, I'll say it quite here, I'm not a favor of thinking that we should be taking the rec hall and putting 100 tents there because people need a spot to go camping because they come here to go surfing. You know, there's a need for the rec hall and other properties that serve the community, not for necessarily for those 2 or 3 day adventurous. So, then you know it kind of pigtails into, you know, our bylaw is some people were questioning why we closed off the parking lot here at the community center on, I think it was Saturday. And that was because there was some, you know, people were kind of coming in. I think there was 20 cars in the parking lot, and people were coming to the community center, and frankly a little bit aggressive. And it's not something that I don't think anybody in the community wants to see. So they did some low-hanging fruits by blocking off the community center. And I don't think we want to see that on any of our back roads or our back streets or neighborhoods. So, and tomorrow, I don't think I've sent you the link yet, but there will be another meeting with Toloquit and a few other agencies as we try to go next steps and ensuring that doesn't kind of migrate into the community, because we have very much a low tolerance or no tolerance for that. Anything else on that one? Any questions? No? Okay.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
What are the hours of bylaw? Because I've had a few people who've been trying to call in and have been getting no response.
Good question.
Through the mayor, they're variable. We do have bylaw officers now on 7 days a week. We have a team. We have 2 bylaw officers. It's the first time in quite a while that we've had a second bylaw officer resident. The hours, frankly, I would rather not say, because we vary them partly because sometimes we want to cover nighttime calls. Sometimes they're on early in the morning. Often they're on early in the morning. Many days, both early and late. Because issues vary. Anytime I'll also say, anytime calls come in, we receive them. They absolutely are prioritized. People shouldn't expect to get a live answer at any time, but the best thing people can do is leave an email with details, and we do have to prioritize calls and answer those that are more time sensitive and pressing. And so an email or leaving a message will achieve the same thing. Does that help?
That is awesome. Thank you. The 7 days a week makes a difference, just knowing that.
It's great.
And it's hard to distinguish what pickup truck they're driving. A lot of people, they just think it's 2 more public works people driving around town, but they are 2 of them, and we're working on
Decals are on the way.
We're working on some more, making them stand out of the crowd a little bit. Maybe paint them yellow, but we're going to put some stickers on them and stuff so people realize there is actually bylaw that is active in the community. Yeah.
So to be clear, through the mayor, Mr. Gregg, is it that they have set hours and that they're working on windows before and after that, which is why we're not sort of giving those hours? And could we know what those are anyways?
Generally between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. We don't have the resources to have that kind of coverage 7 days a week or to have 24/7 coverage. More often between 7 a.m. and 10 p.m. is when we will have bylaw staff on, but sometimes it's other times too. We do mix it up, really in response to what are the patterns of what we're seeing. In the summer months, there are times when we've gone much earlier and much later because of the nature of the calls that they get.
Any other questions on that one? No, okay. Excuse me. We're going to move to legislation, if you don't mind. And starting with 13.1 strata Plan Whiskey Landing Utility Bill. Miss Monteith, welcome back.
Thank you. Through the mayor. Turn so I can see you. Back in November of 2020, as our manager of finance got some time here under her belt, she started going back and reviewing some of the way we bill and compared them to the bylaws that we have, and she noticed that we were billing the property we know as Whiskey Landing incorrectly to their benefit, so we were underbilling. And we sent them an email to let them know that we would be charging them appropriately going forward. In December, the strata came to council with a request, and you directed us to meet with them and see what we could find out and report back to you. So here I am today. Ms. Nelson and I met with the strata manager and a couple of strata members on February 8th of this year. And it was our understanding that they would really like an exemption on the 4 units that are uninhabitable, so they wouldn't ever have water or be able to be connected to water. And my feeling is that this is a really uncommon situation. We bill by indefeasible title. You wouldn't normally have units that no one can live in or aren't going to have access to water as its own title. You wouldn't give normally a common area or a closet its own title. So this is very unusual, and it's our feeling that when the regulatory bylaw was written, it wouldn't have contemplated that scenario. It was written in the spirit of, we're charging you for water, but really for these 4 units, there's never going to be water in those 4 units. So we've only been charging for 1. They have 33 indefeasible titles. So to write off the 4 would make it 29 units. And that's their understanding of what I'm going to come forward with you today. So that's my recommendation, is in the spirit of fairness and the fact that they can't have water for those units, is to bill for the 29 instead of the 33. And I've made some recommendations and happy to answer any questions as well.
Any questions for Ms. Monteith while she's at the podium? No, I think this one's pretty straightforward. Councillor McEwen?
I'll move recommendation 1, that council authorize a special exemption for uninhabitable units SL 1, 2, 3, and 17 in Strata Plan VIS 6411-Whiskey Landing.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you for cleaning that up, Ms. Monteith.
Thank you.
Okay, moving along. 13.2, application for building permits on signature circle lots. Mr. Gregg. You got a little drum roll before you came up. One second there, Mr. Gregg.
Can we turn him up, Joey?
There we go.
Our director of finance turned the power off on me.
She was just trying to save the town some money there.
Conserving power.
It's just a
Excellent.
habit.
Excellent. And it's April 14th council meeting. Council directed staff to prepare a zoning amendment bylaw to return the zoning of the CD5A and CD6 lands north of Ancient Cedars and the current end of the Wild Pacific Trail to a rural zoning designation like they held previously, to for now allow a single residential use on large rural lots. On May 4th, council gave first reading to an OCP amendment and rezoning bylaw. And after those bylaws received first reading, council also directed staff to reach out to the owners of affected properties. So a letter was sent to the owners of the registered addresses of the owners. One response was received on June 15th from Ani Wind and Sea Holdings Limited, expressing their objections to the change in the zoning. And then subsequently, on July 29th, Ani Wind and Sea Holdings submitted 29 separate building permit applications for their properties at Signature Circle. I could just hold the microphone too. That might.
That helps a lot.
Does that help a little better? Okay.
Are you're number 8 there? Is that what it says there?
8. Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, you're maxed out anyway.
Okay.
Using his inside voice.
I'll hold the microphone and try and project into it a little more. So just in response to the building permit applications we've received, none of the buildings shown would appear to comply with the rural zoning if that zoning amendment bylaw number 1293, 2021 were adopted. And I just note in the report in front of you that Section 463 of the Local Government Act provides council the ability to direct that a building permit be withheld for a period of 30 days if it passes a resolution identifying what it considers to be a conflict between a development proposed in the application for a building permit and an OCP or zoning bylaw under preparation or in the works. So staff recommend that council consider passing a resolution to withhold building permits for 30 days on the Signature Circle lots for these 29 applications. Staff review of the 29 building permit applications and their consistency with the OCP and zoning amendments would be presented in a report to council at a special council meeting to be scheduled prior to the end of that 30-day withholding period.
Thank you, Mr. Gregg. I think it's pretty straightforward. There is one recommendation.
I'll go ahead and move it.
Thank you.
That pursuant to Section 463 of the Local Government Act, Council direct the building permits be withheld in relation to each of the building permit applications submitted on July 29th, 2021 in relation to Signature Circle properties, strata lots 1 through 4 and 6 through 30, district lots 471, 472, and 473, Clackwat Land District Strata Plan, VIS 6504 for a period of 30 days as the development purposed in the building permit applications exceed the minimum permitted building size, do not comply with the permitted uses and encroach within minimum setbacks under the District of Euclid zoning amendment bylaw number 1293 2021, and the use of the density of the lots would not comply with the low density rural residential designation under the District of Euclid Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw Number 1292/2021, both of which bylaws are currently under consideration by Council, and Council directs staff to provide a report on the building permit applications for further consideration by Council within the 30-day period in accordance with Section 463(3) of the Local Government Act.
I'll second
Point
that.
of order.
Oh.
The word minimum was used instead of the word maximum.
No, we'll just.
May I please make it so it's encroach within minimum setbacks under the District of Euclid zoning amendment bylaw?
No, you said minimum. It's right here. It should read maximum.
Oh, you're talking about the above. I was looking at that one right there. That one. So, to correct, applications exceed the maximum permitted building size, do not comply with the permitted uses, and encroach within minimum setbacks.
I will second that as amended.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Thank you for taking that on. Okay, moving along to 13.3 OCP and zoning amendments, CD5A and CD6 areas to rural residential. Mr. Gregg.
Mayor, as council is aware, the official community plan and zoning amendment bylaws number 1292 and 1293, 2021, were introduced and given first reading at the May 4th, 2021 council meeting. And in the report in front of you, staff are recommending that council consider giving second reading to Euclid official community plan amendment bylaw number 1292, 2021, and Euclid zoning amendment bylaw number 1293, 2021, as found in the appendices to the report, and refer the bylaws to a public hearing. And just note that the tentative date for a public hearing we're looking at would be September 7th.
Okay. Thank you. There's a long list here. Okay, who's taking that one on?
Do you want me to do it? Do you want me to do it as a block?
If you don't mind, we'll just do them individually.
Okay. I'll move recommendation. It is one, that council has considered the consultation requirements under section 475 of the Local Government Act in relation to District of Euclid Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1292, 2021.
Second
That.
Second by Councillor Cole. She had her hand up, I think. And any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
And two, the council is satisfied that the consultation with owners of land affected by the amendments in District of Euclid Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1292, 2021, as previously directed, is sufficient for the purpose of consultation under section 475 of the Local Government Act.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And three, that council is satisfied that consultation under section 475 of the Local Government Act in relation to the District of Euclid Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1292, 2021 does not need to be early and ongoing.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And four, that council is satisfied that, given its narrow focus, specific consultation on District of Euclid Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1292, 2021, with the persons, organizations, and authorities identified in section 475, 2B of the Local Government Act, including the Ukulethot Government, Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District, District of Tofino, SD70 Board of Education, or provincial agencies is not required.
I'll move that.
Second by Councillor Cole. And any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And five, the council has reviewed the correspondence received from Ani Wind and Sea Holdings Limited, dated June 8th, 2021.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Is everyone sick of hearing me now?
No, you're doing great.
Number six, the council has consulted with the boards of education of those school districts whose area includes the area covered by District of Euclid Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1292, 2021.
I'll second.
Second by Councillor Hoare. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And number seven, the council has considered District of Euclid Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1292, 2021 in conjunction with the District of Euclid Financial Plan.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Number eight, the council has considered District of Euclid Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1292, 2021 in conjunction with the Waste Management Plan.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
Isn't this fun, guys? Number nine, the council gives second reading to District of Euclid Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1292, 2021.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And 10, the council gives second reading to District of Euclid Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1293, 2021.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And number 11, that council refer District of Euclid Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1292, 2021, and District of Euclid Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1293, 2021 to a public hearing.
Second.
Perfect. Thank you. And all in favor? Oh, sorry, any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. I did good to the last one. Okay, thank you. Okay, 13.4, I am going to excuse myself because I do live in the neighborhood. Pass it off to Councillor Hoare. Thank you.
So you get there.
All right. Making sure I have all my papers in order. Mr. Krieg?
Through the chair. So this is the bringing back the Lot 16 proposed housing development that we held a little committee, the whole meeting on the 10th of August to discuss. And subsequent to that committee of the whole meeting, I just, in the report that's in front of you, briefly, it notes that the applicant has proposed some changes to address some of the issues that had been discussed and concerns that were raised. And the changes, I'll just highlight them, what's now being offered by the applicant. There's really three things. First is to reduce the height of the apartment building to 3 stories instead of 4. Second is to increase the minimum setback of the townhomes, and that's along the sort of rear property line on the backs of the properties. There's residential properties at front on Marine Drive that share a rear property line with that townhome site. So their proposal is to increase the setback, which had been 10 meters. They're proposing to increase that to 15 meters. And then third, they have offered to dedicate an additional 280 square meters, or roughly 3,000 square feet of parkland, noting some of the concerns around the ability to put a small playground or tot lot on the property. And in the staff report, basically the recommendations that are put there and the draft amendments in the bylaw would essentially put those into effect. They would incorporate those changes into both the rezoning bylaw and then the one piece is in one of the conditions of approval that council had signaled. And in the report as well, I would just highlight that on page 218 of your agenda, we do highlight, there's a brief discussion there of other issues, because out of as often happens in the discussion, both in committee of the whole and the earlier public hearing, there were some issues that went beyond just the Lot 16 development, things like the impact of community growth and development overall, capacity of infrastructure, that impacts on the natural environment, housing affordability, impacts of growth and development generally in the community around character of the community and quality of life. And so we have a little bit of discussion there, which just suggesting that those may be things to earmark and look for council discussion. Having heard from all of this public input, whether there's a desire to see staff address some options of that with the draft official community plan, and then we'll set that aside and focus back on Lot 16. And essentially, this is an appropriate time to discuss what was heard in the committee of the whole meeting over 4 hours. And then council really has the levers that council controls is whether to change, if you'd like to see changes to aspects of the proposed development or conditions of final approval or contents of the zoning amendment bylaw. As I noted, the draft of what's there and the recommendations is really if council wish to put in effect what has been offered by the proponent. Those amendments would do that, but it's certainly it's up to council if you want to make other changes. And I just also would note that because there's been new information with all of this, regardless of how this goes, if this moves forward, then a new public hearing would need to be held on the bylaw, and tentatively, if this were moved forward today, that we'd be looking at that September 7th date potentially. Beyond that, I would see if there are any questions from council, either from whatever sort of arose during the committee of the whole discussion. It was rather late by the time that wrapped up, so that kind of was cut short. I think everyone was needing some food and rest after that. But now would be a time if there are questions, we can certainly attempt to answer them.
Councillor Kemps?
Through the acting mayor to staff. No, through the acting mayor to staff. So if this was to go through, and not saying that this, let me just say this first. No, I'll ask this question. So who does, I have a statement. So who looks after is this the district of Ucluelet or the developer that looks after the new road being punched in from, let's say, Victoria Road to the development?
Through the chair, I'd ask just to clarify what you mean by looks after the construction and installing that.
Construction and installing and sidewalks and so forth.
So everything on site that's being constructed would be built to our standard. It would be entirely at the cost of the developer. So that new road is built by the developer. That's part of the subdivision is they have to create a new road, provide water and sewer to all of those lots, street lights, walkways for pedestrians. All of that goes in, as well as the private utilities, the TELUS and the hydro connection. That's all on their nickel. After the subdivision work complete, it is dedicated to the district and it becomes a road like the rest of our road system.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McEwen?
Thank you. Through the chair to staff. They are offering the additional parkland. Well, first of all, I'm really happy to see that the developer was listening to people at the committee of the whole meeting and to their benefit, they have offered these 3 new changes, one being forget the 4th story, which everybody was pretty much opposed to. And the second one was increasing the setback from 10 meter to 15 meter. And then when it comes to the 3,000 square feet of parkland, they are offering the land, correct, but not any sort of equipment or playground supplies.
Through the chair, yes, that we asked for clarification, and they're quite clear that they are basically giving the land and suggest that if whatever improvements, be it play equipment or benches or water fountains or anything like that, that would really be up to the district. And they noted the cash amenity contribution that they had previously proposed, and that certainly that has no direction. It's really up to council and its budget decisions of where that money were focused, and they referred to that when that question was raised.
So that, just further to that, that's the $1,000 per door cash contribution, correct?
Correct, and with the development they've shown, it would be $112,000.
Thank
Do
you.
Sorry, go ahead.
I just said thank you.
Oh, okay. Councillor Cole, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to, after listening to everybody the other night, and then, like you said, going home and digesting the information and our late dinner, and then having spoke with the developer and had a few more questions, as you know, and just gauging for myself sort of how far they were into this is all we can do. This is, yes, we can do these additional few things. And at what point does it become not feasible for them to do that and instead do the 76, short-term rentals that would really not behoove the issues and kind of compound some of our issues we have right now. And I did get a clear sense that they're there, that these last offerings, which were thoughtful in that they listened to some of those things at our meeting. And he did speak up a couple of times, which I appreciated. A couple of things that I know I heard were the sheer amount of people as far as the density goes and those amount of people in that number of homes. And a couple of things that struck me was they're not all going to just all of a sudden be there at once. This takes place over 10, 15 years is the plan. So it's this phased approach, and not all of these doors will have people behind them right away. So as far as easing into something that are more people in our community, I think that sort of, I had to stop and think, okay, well, it's not going to be, 200, 300, 400 people right away. That's not going to be the case. And I did appreciate that hearing about the CHMC. That was the first time that we heard about it in that setting, and followed up with him on that. And that was something that obviously it works for him as a developer, as well as it certainly works for us as far as an affordability component to that. I also thought there were some numbers thrown out there, 500 people and 2.5 cars each or whatever. I kind of thought that there are some people that are just, like my husband, myself, and my son in our home. And there will be some of those. There will be some people who maybe they do only live here 6 months of the year. Maybe that's not the ideal situation. But as far as the density of the lots and the amount of people there, I think it's important to say that some people will want an apartment building just for themselves, and not everybody is going to be stacked chock-a-block. I just don't think that's a reality. I looked at the big hole when you look on the map here in the agenda or on the OCP, and that hole that is the space that this development would take up. And then you look at the surrounding areas and you count the amount of lots that would be the equivalent to go into that space, including the apartments. And then if you think about the densification with the townhomes and the apartments on either end, and when I look at the size of our lot on Pine Street, and I think it's not actually that far off. And if they're going to have, some of those lots are going to be smaller than that, and a couple of them, and from what I understood in talking with the developer, is that it's going to be less of the larger version now because of the other lots that they're losing to accommodate the entrance onto Victoria instead of down at the corner, where there's always been that pathway to have that connection, that there's a couple lots are going to be lost there, and then the other one for the park, and with the setback and such, that the numbers are actually kind of creeping down, and the amount of smaller or the larger lots that might have the secondary detached dwellings, those are kind of dwindled now as well. So the actual number we looked at to begin with will in reality pan out much smaller, and it will be over time. And I'm just really glad that none of us wanted to see the 4 stories, and so that I think is. I also threw in there that maybe you want to throw a sidewalk when you're pouring. I said to him, when you're pouring that, that gold cement down, maybe you could throw a strip for a sidewalk down Victoria, but that didn't really fly. So, but I think we've asked everything we can. I'm personally happy with where it's at. I know that it seems daunting to the people who are right there, but I think these are going to be smaller changes over time than what it looks like when you look at just the raw numbers of it. That was my takeaway.
Thanks. Councillor McEwen, go ahead.
Thanks for dealing with the density issue, Councillor Cole. I was going to bring that up too. The other thing that came up at the committee of the whole meeting was the fact that it would be nice if locals could have first choice of the apartments or of the townhouses. And I guess because we don't have a housing authority, it would be really difficult for the district to actually monitor that. And so there really is nobody that would pre-qualify buyers. Am I right, Mr. Gregg?
Through the chair, that's correct. That's something, if council wished to go down that road, and if the developer agreed to that, to say a covenant that would say that they would make them available to locals first, that's something that we simply don't have, a housing authority or really a structure which would just easily pick that up and run with it. So if that were the direction of both the applicant and where council wanted to go, then we would have to look at how would that work and how would it be managed. And I know there are some covenants that were on the Ocean West property. Sorry, I'm getting the signal I need to speak up. That had done that had said that the lots would be under a certain size would be marketed to locals first. But there's no detail in those. We looked to see, okay, what was the mechanism? There's really no detail on, other than a local is someone I think has lived here 90 days, and nothing to prevent those from being resold, or doesn't really speak to how and who determines whether that person is a resident or not. So we would have to create that if council wished to explore that.
Thank you. I know the developer has stated that he hopes that there will be locals buying into this, and I'm sure there will be, but I don't see how we can actually monitor that personally.
Councillor Kemps, have you got a comment or a question?
I just have a question. So when Edwards Place came available, there was some pre-sales done. So how is that just because they marketed just to the local areas? Is that all? Do you think that that's all that they did?
Through the chair, so I wasn't part of that. I'm not sure whether the pre-sales, there's two things I can answer about how pre-sales work, but whether that pre-sales was directly pinned or guaranteed to be locals would have first crack at that, or whether that was a marketing ploy. I can't speak to that. Pre-sales of a subdivision can occur as soon as they have what's referred to as a preliminary layout assessment, which is the approving officer laying out, here's the conditions you need to meet in order to get approval. Once that's issued, then under the Real Estate Marketing Act, a property owner could start marketing and pre-selling lots. And that's before physically the roads are completed and that sort of thing. So that may have been what was happening there, which is sort of a timing thing and a way to gauge interest, I guess. But I'm not familiar with whether Edwards Place included some provision specifically around local buyers.
So, Mr. Gregg, correct me if I'm wrong, but Lot 13, we had to write the specifics for who would be eligible on that one. I know that's an affordable housing one, so it's slightly different, but.
Through the chair, yes, on the Lot 13 development, there were both affordable for sale properties, which are sold. That's through the CMHC AHOP, Affordable Home Ownership Program, where CMHC is playing that role like a housing authority of vetting the qualifications of the buyers, the income level, and whether you have a trust fund or investments, all that kind of stuff, and where do you live and work, and all those things are being done by CMHC, which is great. And then there's also the affordable rental properties. The covenant does specify, essentially, it's for people who are living and working in Euclid, and they have to, the owner, whoever they are, whether it's a business or an individual owns that as an investment, they need to declare who is, and essentially every year be providing a declaration of who's occupying it, what's their rent, what's their income, and that they are qualifying. So yes, that's the kind of structure I was talking about. But for the pre-sale, again, that's a question of we don't currently have the sort of staffed housing authority that typically does that kind of work.
Any other, Councillor McEwen?
Just a comment, when we did try to press for a sidewalk down Victoria Road, the response back was that when you look at the 2 lots they are giving us, what they're giving the district of Ucluelet 1 lot, and now they're giving 1 lot for the new park, for the playground. And the lots they're losing by changing the entrance onto Victoria, the upgrades, the cash, and now changing the apartment from 4 to 3 stories, we are giving several million toward this project. So I think they're at the end of their bargaining capacity, is my opinion.
I concur. My conversation was focused on green space and setbacks. I did fire the Victoria Road sidewalk. I think we all
did.
threw that one at them. And I appreciate that the setbacks have been increased. I kind of wanted a green space covenant, and I pushed a little harder for that too. But 5 meters more on the setbacks looks about as good as it's going to get.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we all tried very hard on this one. I think this is a very good example of why it's so important to be part of the OCP process and everything, and how things are zoned in the future. I've lived here for over 50 years, and it's not like there's a lot of things that I don't like about it. I mean, it's change, right? So, but there's a lot of things I do like about it compared to what it could be. So I think we're all on the same page with that about where we are going forward.
Councillor Cole?
I'm just going to make one more comment because I thought it was kind of interesting. I had a few people mention to me, well, if they were going to do this and then you ask for that, and now they're going to do that, and why can't you just keep asking? But I believe in my conversation with them when I said, I just kind of, I'm not a very good barterer. I usually end up paying more for things in places where you barter for things. However, in this instance, why are they giving what like millions of dollars of contribution to what is his right to develop, how he wants to develop? At the end of the day, that's where he wants to live. Though I'm pretty sure one of those 5 lots out front, and that they want to join this community, and they've been thinking and working on this for 9 years now, and that by the time that part of the section is done, he'll be ready to move his family here and such. So you want to give to the community and be, welcomed and do everything you can while you can. But at some point, I think it gets to be where it just won't be financially feasible for him then to have his home here, which is probably part of the parcel and good for him. And at this point, I think it's a win-win-win, and the alternative of more short-term rentals is what keeps me up at night. So
That keeps me up at night too, but that's got to do with the short-term rentals around me. As the one person who lives in a multifamily dwelling in this town, I would like to see more townhouses. I grew up as a kid in townhouses and row houses and affordable housing and student housing, and we need more density. And in fact, somebody made a comment about environmental sustainability. It is in fact more sustainable to have denser developments. If you look at parts of Europe, somebody pointed out to me Japan, which is islands and they can only develop so much. They have huge green spaces around the cities, but right around the cities are all built up. They're dense. I know we're a small town, but we've got a lot of people who desperately need housing, and that is what I am hearing every day. So, Councillor Cole?
Sorry, I said the last one was one more thing, but there is another component to it where for a municipality and financially, you know, environmentally and all of that aside, but financially to have, as far as the sprawl and the ruralness is to opposed to a little bit of this density is actually financially more feasible in the community. Ms. Monteith, probably you could just shake your head if I'm wrong, but I did take that away from thumbs up. Excellent. So there's that, and the fact that for all the taxpayers in the community, that is, you know, a bonus to the program.
All right, is there a flavor for the recommendations in this report? No. Councillor McEwen.
I'll take this one. Shall we do them one at a time? There's 5 of them.
Probably the best idea.
Mr. Gregg?
Just before, just as a, through the chair, this is sort of a hybrid meeting where there are Zoom participants as well, including, I believe, the applicant. And just anytime someone has their application in front of council, it's good to see, sort of check in and see if there were any comment or desire to participate, just simply because they're not here in the room.
I do not.
Go ahead.
I do not see the applicant on Zoom at this moment, and I also see no raised hands from. I'm sorry, the applicant is not online at this time.
Thank you, Paula. Thank you, Mr. Gregg, for keeping me on track, because, you know, skid. Councillor McEwen.
I'll move recommendation 1 that council rescind second reading of District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1284, 2021.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Cole. Any more discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And I'll move recommendation 2 that council amend District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1284, 2021 to incorporate the following changes as found in appendices B and C to the staff report dated August 17th, 2021. A, on proposed lot A, in brackets apartment site, in the new section R-3.8.1 brackets 1, remove subsection C, allowing a maximum height of 16 meters, in which case the 11-meter maximum height regulation in the existing R3 zoning regulations would apply. And B, on proposed lot B, in brackets townhome site, in the new section R-3.8.1, in brackets 5, increase the minimum setback from 10 meters or 33 feet to 15 meters or 49 feet.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Cole. Any more comments, discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And I'll move recommendation 3 that council give second reading to District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1284, 2021 as amended.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Kemps. Any more discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And I'll move recommendation 4 that council defer District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1284, 2021 to a public hearing.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Kemps. Any more discussion? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried.
And I'll move recommendation 5 that council indicate that adoption of District of Ucluelet Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1284, 2021 would be subject to registration of a section 219 restrictive covenant on the title of the subject property to ensure, as a matter of public interest, that the following additional offer be satisfied as the property is subdivided and developed. K, dedication of an additional 280 square meter area of parkland.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Cole. Any more discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. So we will move that forward to a public... Oh, am I good? Is that it? That's it. I'm like, I felt like I was missing something. Sorry, having a moment. We're missing a mayor. That's what we're doing. So tentatively, we'd be looking at a public hearing around the 7th, correct?
Sorry, through the mayor, to Mr. Gregg. I might be wrong, but I have we have harbor authority on the 7th. So I don't know if we have the timing sorted out. Or it matters.
So I think the initial plan was to have it after the Harbor Authority in the evening, but as Mr. Gregg said, this is tentative at this point, so we're going to have to look around to make sure everybody's schedules work, all the council members' schedules work, and to make sure it works with everybody's schedule. So that's a tentative date. Notice will have to be published according to the Community Charter and the Local Government Act, and that will happen in due course.
We're good? Excuse me. Okay, moving on to 13.5, 1316, and 1330 Reef Point Road. OCP Amendment Bylaw number 1281 and Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1282 adoption. Again, this is the adoption portion, so this is not a point of public input at this point. We're at the adoption process level. Mr. Gregg?
Thank you, through the mayor. And I just ask that a couple of slides and a point of clarification. But these bylaws were subject to a public hearing, and following the public hearing, council gave third reading to the bylaws on April 14th, as you'll recall. That was a little bit of time ago. There were some discussions between the owners of the property and the Uclothat First Nation, as noted in the report, that those have concluded, and sort of out of respect to those discussions and a request from the Uclothat that this has been sort of left until this point. And I'll just call up a slide here.
The kids are up there, yeah.
Okay, so this is the rezoning was part of the what's we're referring to as the lodge property, which is the OCP amendment and rezoning of these lot 35 and. Okay, I'll speak louder. This is the sort of the lodge property, which is one portion of their overall development. This is what's subject to the bylaws that council is considering. And there was a question, a statement that was a bit of an oversimplification, where I referred to the Midden site, which is essentially this triangular parcel that would be created where there's a covenant protecting what's a known midden. That in your report it refers to that the lodge property does not overlap the midden, and I should just clarify. Sorry, I'm trying to advance the slide here. There we are. Oh, this is a little finicky. Okay. So just to clarify, there is a covenant covering the Midden site, and so this is dashed line here that does overlap the corner of lot 35, which is part of the large property. That covenant area, remains there, and that's somewhat different than the known boundaries of the Midden, which we will not show because that's not public information. The extent of the Midden is a little smaller in this area. It's actually just nicks the corner of lot 35, but does overlap lot 35. But I would also just point out that area, the development that is being proposed does not overlap that portion of the property. And as was shown previously to council, I think in this slide here, so this is the tail end of lot 35, and the green outline is the area that in the covenant that's now been signed by the property, that will have a green space covenant, no building, no disturbance would happen in that area. And again, just down in this little corner of it is where it sort of overlaps what's known as the Midden site. So there would be no development in that corner of the lodge property. I just want to give that clarification because the wording may have been misleading, and I had a question from a member of the public, and so I think clarifying that's important. So if there are any questions about that, I'm going to try to answer them. And otherwise, council sort of held off further consideration, as I mentioned, of other aspects of the development proposal out of respect to those discussions which have concluded. And so with the signed covenants now in hand, which council had signaled previously being conditions of final adoption, council may consider adopting the bylaws for the lodge properties for these two lots.
Any questions from any councillors for Mr. Gregg? Yeah, for me, the letter of support from Ucluathon, obviously that was the big one for me, and that satisfies my concerns, quite frankly. Are we good, Joseph? We're good? Okay. Okay, there are a couple of recommendations.
I think it's my turn.
Okay.
I'm just going to take the easy ones.
That's
I
an easy
move
one.
that. Can we do them as a block, the two together, or separately is fine?
Please, I like that theme.
Move that District of Euclid Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw number 1281/2020 be adopted.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried.
I will move that District of Euclid Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 1282/2020 be adopted.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay. Did you guys want to take a little break, or did you want to keep on going? Yeah. So I'll move that we take a 5-minute break, and we'll get back to the rest of our business.
Second the 5 minutes.
Okay. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Don't have it long. Just enjoy your moment. Enjoy your moment. We're good? Okay, thank you. Okay, well, welcome back, everyone. Okay. We're going to move to reports 12.1 Apatite House project update from Miss Fortune. Don't worry. It's my life story. It's my life story, Miss Fortune.
Welcome to my house. Yes, exactly.
Oh yeah, you got one of those too.
Yeah, I got one of those too. Two of those, actually. So through the mayor, you've got a report in front of you, and I would just like to walk you through in terms of the big picture of what's happening at Apatite House. Joy, am I clear? Good. Perfect. So certainly, as council is aware, the District of Hewlett has been working on the redevelopment of the former Lightkeeper's resident house into an interpretive storm watching center and a community gathering place. The intent is to maintain the iconic look and feel of the lighthouse of the past and to update it with more functional space for the future. At the big picture level, the retention of the current building character is key to what we're doing in terms of upgrades. Things like wraparound decks, outdoor amphitheaters, and accessible pathways. Staff, as you know, is working with the consultant to prepare a schematic design package that retains the existing house foundation but includes the demolishing of the existing top floor with the replacement of a new framed structure and inside the floor and roof. So as you see on, I'm not quite sure what page it is, but you've got the rendering of what it potentially looks like. Thank you, 82. And that's our rendering that we're looking at in terms of what could possibly be there. Again, as you see, it's got the iconic look of the red roof and the white siding. If you look, and then the next page over, you'll look at the floor plan. The architect scheme package shows the proposed floor plan for the main level, wraparound desk, too many hours in the office, wraparound deck, and the basement. Just the question that you'd had in the past was the size of the space, so it's basically 600 square feet for the top level. And as you see, the washrooms go out onto the sides so that you're not going into the central area. And the front door is on the top left-hand corner, and it enters into sort of a welcoming reception area. If you look at the next diagram, we've got the Amphitrite Point house from the southeast view. Sure. Yeah, sorry, I didn't think we would have this many people. Yeah, my apologies. We're good now? Thanks for that. No, that's great. Okay,
there you
so
go.
I'm going to back up to page 82, I believe it was, with the 3D rendering.
Yep.
And that's, uh-oh, I'm over my 90 seconds, Andy. So if we look at the 3D rendering, this is as you come down onto this space, so you're walking down the pathway and you turn and you see this amazing, lovely, iconic building with the red roof and the white sides. The floor plan is in front of you. Again, what we're trying to do is maximize the space in order to have it as a multifunctional space. Open circulation and provides opening to the outside, the large wraparound deck, and easy access points to the north and the east. If you flip over to the next page, you see a sort of more of a front end from the pathway up. And as you can see, there's areas where they'll be protected, so you can storm watch from both the upper deck and the lower deck, as well as an open space for circulation for programming both indoors and out. On the next page, you'll see the landscape site view. What we're looking at is creating is a bit of an amphitheater, as well as a tent location for events, and an open deck as we previously discussed. The next step is to advance to the schematic design is to design development, and this is to verify the project costs through the Class B estimate, and this will be presented at the October 12th meeting, council meeting, and we will have a timeline for you as well at that point in time moving forward. And I'd be more than happy to take any questions.
Councillor McEwen?
Thank you. Through the mayor to staff, great report.
Thank you.
It was nice to read that it's a 50-person public assembly space, so
That's
that
correct.
now gives me a sense of the space itself.
Perfect.
I did have a question on the back page as far as the budget goes. I don't know
Yes.
if you can answer that or not. So the grant was 998,000 and RMI funds is 363,000.
That's correct.
So that's a total of 1,361,000, but the project cost is approximately 1,831,000. So that's a $470,000 difference.
Yes, at the last, if I may, through the mayor, at the last council meetings, I did present you with those price tags. What I didn't want to do at this stage is to have, we're working towards the Class B through design development for the Class B estimate, and I wanted to make sure we were clear on what we were doing with the costs, so that on the 12th of October, I'll present you both with the Class B, a little refined budget, as well as potential locations where we can meet the shortfall.
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome.
Or options about where you might need a few more dollars.
Correct.
Right. And I just started, because there's audience here, just to stress that this is all through RMI, so the 2% hotel tax, those that you contribute is one of those initiatives again. It's not coming out of property tax, it's coming out of that. So I imagine Ms. Fortune might have to review her 5-year plan, or et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's a wonderful, and I hope everybody likes the concept of this. I think the outside auditorium, not just for Debbie, who's going to run it, and she won't have to run Ozart anymore, she can run the auditorium. Yeah, okay. In October when it's raining, we'll see you there. Sorry, is there any other questions for Ms. Fortune? No, thank you for the report, and it's
Thank you.
wonderful to see this moving along nicely.
Great. Thank you very much.
We do have one recommendation.
I can move it. That council support the Amphitrite House project schematic design in order to advance the design development and to verify the proposed projected cost.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Well, that's a fun one. 12.2 contract award, Village Green Design and Engineering Services. Holy moly. Another theme. Oh, sorry. I was writing down my first question. Go ahead, Mr. Gregg. Thank you.
Thank you, through the mayor. And we a couple of slides here. So as council is aware that expansion and revitalization of the Village Green is a priority for the district, both in council's strategic plan and the draft official community plan. So we've been working towards this. And so I'm trying to advance the slide here.
It's not a slideshow if there isn't a problem.
I can
Could I have
advance
the
those
next
for
slide,
you.
please? The project went to a public open house in just pre-COVID. It was December of 2019. It seems like a long time ago, with some concept plans and really to look at options and get feedback from the community. And the design direction sort of shaped the vision for Village Green. It's on page 88 of your agenda. Was briefly a prominent pedestrian-oriented community space without vehicles would be ideal. This first phase will leave the road connecting through. The second, there is a future, hopefully second phase, but there's traffic solutions that need to be solved. So this is really everything up to the edge of the road. Connections to the ocean through views and universal access, improved connections to existing businesses, a safe and unique new playground for locals and visitors, space and amenities to support festivals, events, and the farmers market, diverse sitting, viewing, and eating places, and a welcoming and safe outdoor space where visitors can observe the activities of the local marine industry, such as fishing, vessel unloading. Those are the sort of things that sort of drive and really growing what has been the success of the Village Green as much loved community outdoor space. So in June, we issued a request for proposals from qualified consulting teams to take us sort of to the next step of design and to take this through bidding it out to get construction underway. And so 7 proposals were submitted, and the proposal from the Lanark and Herald team, which is Lanark, our landscape architects out of Nanaimo, and Herald Engineering have an office here in Ucluelet, and they have a civil engineer on their team. And so those 2 teams would be involved in developing the design, but then also putting together the whole bid package for construction documents and then overseeing construction on behalf of the district. So that's sort of what the contract is for. And as I said, we had 7 proposals. Theirs we deem to be the greatest value for the district based on their experience and their proposal, and it aligns with the project budget. And I'll just briefly mention the project budget, which is on the slide. And I've been told that if I point to the screen behind you, then people who are watching by Zoom would be able to see. And so I would just highlight that there's sort of 2 different slides. One was part of the budget presentation that council will have seen this before. And so there is a portion of work that has been done that already to date. It's just over $100,000. That includes a survey of the entire site as well as all of the public engagement and the conceptual programming and design. So the budget, if we sort of subtract that out of what had already been earmarked, what we have still is $116,000 in gas tax. RMI, we've earmarked $400,000, but then we received a grant we applied for, and we're successful in getting a grant for $700,000 towards this project. So our total, so we're in good shape. Total project budget is $1.177 million, and as I said, we're going through. That's based on the engineer's cost estimate of the conceptual design. We'll refine that as we go forward. We have a little bit extra, which one of the things that is that essentially this project included was the design of the space around a new playground, but not specifically a line item for playground equipment. Partly because we have some other sources of funding for that, and so that will be sort of a separate piece to plug in. But we have already within our budget, we have some room to begin that in a significant way. And I would just ask for the next slide, which is our last slide, just briefly so people are familiar with it, because this is a chance to raise some awareness of the project. So these are some very loose sketches, but it shows the project area. So I'll just highlight a little red dot. That's the municipal hall building. In the office, and so the existing playground is here, and so Cedar Road, and then over here is the Crow's Nest. What this is showing is sort of what's either colored in here is that this would be an expansion of the park area, but also it extends around Fraser Lane to get a pedestrian green walkway connecting and changing the space where right now we put in some temporary picnic tables. Also, the project scope includes the design and engineering of pedestrian crossings and improvements on Main Street to make this a better pedestrian, and really a reworking of this whole intersection at Cedar and Main. And so it's the same plan, but sort of highlighted in yellow. It's maybe a little easier to see. This is the extent of the design work, and the project is intended that we'll design and engineer that out completely, so it's all shovel ready. If at the end of the day there's any difference in the budget, then we have some sense already of what would we leave for next phase. But we think as it stands now, given the cost estimates, we'll see what the construction costs actually are when it goes out to bid, but we're in pretty good shape. So we're seeking council endorsement of awarding the contract for that design team to really get this rolling forward. With that, I just see if there's any questions of council.
Any questions for Mr. Gregg? Again, this is something that's been in the work for a long time, and I think we're really pleased to see this. It's nice to see another part of our community start to get a bit of a facelift after 60 or 70 years. It's been looking the same. So, and definitely playgrounds for those that go down there to use it. It's definitely a big hub, and this will definitely be well appreciated. So it's great to see. So thank you, Mr. Gregg. I know your staff worked hard on this one.
And it does say that there would be more public consultation, correct?
Correct, and the certainly, and the focus going in the next steps of this will particularly be with business and property owners in the immediate vicinity, and as well to discuss and make sure everyone's aware of what's the timing of construction and any kind of changes that they'll be dealing with, and to hear their concerns and input. But also throughout, we've already talked about what are the stages also as aware of just making the public aware and providing information of what's happening and when. And absolutely, we're already talking about scheduling to make sure that we're not having construction disruption during the summer months.
Okay, is your recommendation, Councillor McEwen?
I will move recommendation 1 that council authorize staff to enter into a consulting contract with Lanark Consultants and Herald Engineering to complete the planning, design, tendering, and construction management of the Village Green Revitalization Project for a maximum fee of $149,955.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed, carried. And again, you see the word RMI, Resort Municipality Initiative, and I just want to remind people that if you haven't checked out the parking lot that's behind the Crow's Nest, again, that's another initiative that was used with RMI funding again. So we're just trying to use RMI funding in a way that we like to think benefits the community, not just, people focus that a lot of things that we may do are focusing on tourists, but I'd like to think that we're trying to be creative and things that meet but also the criteria for what you can spend it on and things like this, which are really great community amenities, and using our Resort Municipality Initiative is a great way to fund these. So again, we're really happy to see that. Okay, 12.3, 1082 Peninsula Road, the cabins at Terrace Beach Development Variance Permit DVP 21-02 and Development Permit DP 20-17. Mr. Gregg.
Thank you. Through the mayor, this is a development permit and development variance permit for what we refer to as the cabins property. I would ask maybe that the slides be again brought up on the screen. So this is the DVP and DP for the proposed construction of 13 guest cabins. And again, just a reminder that this point in the agenda is an opportunity for council to seek public comment on their requested variances in the development variance permit. And I would like to, as much as we don't like to admit errors, that I want to point out and clarify there was an error in the development permit wording in the original council agenda. In your late item, I think page 13 of the late agenda, we've basically reprinted the draft development permit. And it's item 4B, which now reads as it should, that the permit is authorizing, and has a list of things that would be authorized. But really, in its essence, it would be authorizing the construction of 13 1,048 square foot motel buildings, each consisting of a 2-bedroom motel unit. That there are 13 units, not as there was some confusion that it was suggesting that there were 26. There are only 13. The plan has not changed, and that is a perfect slide to have on the screen at the moment. It shows that it is those 13 cabins that are being proposed along the alignment of the old Peninsula Road. That is the proposal. They're not double units. There's a single unit, and each one has a parking space. What I'll do now is, and I'll highlight that what we refer to as the cabins, the parcel of land that would be created, because there are a total of 9 titles that are fragments of the old road and pieces of other lots that will be essentially, it's a subdivision to consolidate and then redefine the property lines around that. So the thick black lines show what would become the new parcel. So previously, council was talking about the lodge property, which is off the left-hand side of the screen. The existing cabins are up near the top, and so this is the edge of that parcel. The parcel that we're talking about with the development variance permit and development permits is kind of a C-shaped unit that includes what is a green area that will be set aside by covenant, and then these new cabins that are along the old alignment of the road. And there's a future multi-use building which will be subject to another development permit application in the future, presumably. In the middle of it is a parcel which we refer to as the Midden Parcel, and as noted in the report, as part of the discussions between the owner and the Ucluelethat, the owners have agreed to give that property to the Ucluelethat government. So it will become owned by Ucluelethat. The covenant would define that that will function as parkland. It's park uses only, so it will be preserved, but be transferred to ownership of the Ucluelethat. Next slide, please. I need to speak louder. Okay, next slide. I'll just step through the variances. So there are 4 variances that the development variance permit would cover, and I'll just highlight the location and the essence of them. And so on the left, I'll point out the blue area right at the bottom of the site plan there. There is a strip that's been proposed that would be dedicated as a road right-of-way. We have a bit of a funny shaped piece of municipally owned road right-of-way, which is known as Seabridge Way. And this, the owners have proposed that they would dedicate as part of this, that blue area. And so the southernmost cabin, so I'll look at the diagram on the right here, would be less than the minimum 6 meters from the new property line. And so this first variance is to reduce that to 2 meters, but that would be from the new property line, because currently their property line is out in what would become public parking for Terrace Beach on the municipally owned road right-of-way. So that's the first variance, is to reduce the setback of that cabin from that new red property line. Next slide, please. The second variance is really about the setbacks. So the cabins along the old alignment of Peninsula Road, they're proposing that the minimum setback be 1 meter from the property line, whereas the zoning bylaw requires 3 meters. Part of that is the layout of this, and is that the driveway that is shown kind of wandering along the edge of the cabins, they're attempting to keep from impacting some significant trees that are on the Midden Parcel along the edge of that eastern side of the old road right-of-way. And so by reducing the setback, it allows the cabins to be placed where they have shown them in their plan. Next slide, please. The 4 northernmost cabins, this is the third variance, would be within the 30-meter setback that is in our zoning bylaw required around a watercourse. And there is the watercourse that is 8 meters from the nearest cabin. So they're proposing that variance for reducing that from 30 meters to a minimum of that 8 meters for that northern corner. And we do note that watercourse was identified by the project biologist. They refer to it as a ditch. It was channelized, but is a watercourse technically, and so that is the nature of this, or the reasoning behind the variance. Next slide, please. And the this future mixed-use building, this is down in the lower right corner of the property, that future building, it is shown, again, that would be part of a future development permit to show what is the details. They haven't designed the details of that building, but the new lot line that would define the edge of what is the Midden area would be right along the edge of that building. So they're essentially proposing that variance would allow for a 0 setbacks. The building could be right at where that lot line is, because it is quite tight between that area and Peninsula Road. And so the building itself is outside of what is the covenanted, and would become a parcel of the Midden. And so they're trying to get the building to sort of fit within the space that's available there, but it would require a 0 setback for that building corner. And we note that a condition that we've suggested on the development variance permit is that would be subject to an arborist confirming if that 0 setback, if it had an impact on trees on or off-site within the Midden Parcel, that would need to be avoided. And so they doesn't guarantee that they would build at 0 setback, but they need to respect what's on the neighboring property. But this would give them the opportunity. And I'm just going to note as well. So those are the variances. And I would just note, if we could have the next slide, please. The cabin development, there's no change, as I'd said earlier. I think there was some confusion because of the wording in the draft development permit. These are the designs. They have not changed from what was submitted initially. That the footprint of the buildings is just under 16 feet wide by 24 feet in depth. So they're fairly, and you can see there's some overhang of the upper floors. They're really minimizing the footprint of where the cabins sit on the land. Next slide, please. and these slides were previously presented to council. This was a comparison of what those cabins, sort of the character of them, regarding the comparison to the Terrace Beach Resort that's immediately to the south. Next slide, please. They further provided some images which inserted as well. I mean, the upper image sort of makes the trees invisible, but this shows, this is looking from the east towards Terrace Beach at the top of this slide. So the cabins would be along the road right of way, and this butts onto the municipal park. So that most of the trees in that side are sitting on the municipal park land. And over on the side here, you can see it again, that the cabins would be aligned along the old road right of way, and that they're not within the municipal park. But the variance that's being requested is that it be a 1 meter setback on that side. And I think there's one more slide, please. Oh, yep, here it is again. This is looking at a bit, if this were Terrace Beach itself, and the cabins behind. This is, again, it's an image trying to do a three-dimensional sort of representation of what it is with the forested site. And you can see they would be sort of in the gap between what's the Midden Parcel on the one side and the municipal park on the other. The Midden extends all the way underneath, as council's aware, but it is also subject to a provincial site alteration permit, which was showing essentially to the province that these cabin footprints, and that they've gone to some lengths, and they have that permit to allow it to proceed. Next slide, please. And then this, again, was a section that was provided showing, again, the public beach, the municipal park portion, which is district land. The Wild Pacific Trail aligns within this, sort of on the edge of the beach, and that the road bed is sort of the high point, if you will, and then it sort of slopes off towards Spring Cove on the right, and that the cabins are being located in amongst the trees there. And the other part that's on the in your agenda on page 98, it talks about the transfer of the Midden Parcel, and again, that's an agreement between the owner and Equal-With-That government, and effectively it sets aside the Midden as parkland with the covenant that is now been signed, that we put on the title of the property, but that would become under Equal-With-That ownership, which is quite a unique arrangement, which the report speaks to a little bit. And it notes that council held off further consideration of the development proposal out of respect, for those ongoing discussions between the owner and Equal-With-That. And those discussions have successfully concluded, and subject to public comment, council could now consider authorizing the requested variances. And once a decision is made on the requested development variance permit, council could then also consider issuing the development variance permit. And so we have received some input. There's the correspondence, the late correspondence on the variances, and also council should provide an opportunity to be heard by the public. And I'm not sure if the applicant wishes to speak, either the representatives here or those who may be online. But I think unless there are questions from council, I think now would be an opportunity for that.
Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Gregg. Well, actually, I'll start with maybe we'll ask those that have been waiting patiently online if there's anybody via Zoom that would like to make any comments.
If there's anybody on Zoom who would like to speak, please raise your hand. If you're attending by phone, press *9. We have an attendee named MB.
Okay.
If I could get your name and address, please.
Yeah, it's Michelle Belanger from 346 Reef Point Road.
We hear you fine there, Michelle. You're a little bit weak. Hello.
Not sure. I take my earbud. Can you hear me now, or is it?
Just a little quiet, but we can hear you.
Okay. So basically, this has been obviously an ongoing issue, because this was originally presented back in January, and then basically taken off the agenda to then be discussed at a later date, which is obviously today. So I think just to outline my concerns about this, I think the best thing is if I just go through the letter that I wrote that got added to the late agenda, I believe. But I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my partner, Mike Foy. So as owners of lot 33 at 346 Reef Point Road, we're voicing our strong opposition to the granting of these development variance permits. And we would also like to request that a decision on the granting of these permits be deferred until there's been an adequate opportunity for consultation with the public at large. So the public notice for this variance was at our doorstep on Friday, August 6th, but the 75 pages of supporting materials weren't made available online until last Friday. And they were contained within a 250-page agenda for today's meeting, which is really only 2 business days notice to review all the materials, prepare a written submission, and organize our thoughts about it. The notice about the variances was actually only delivered to the 5 or so property owners that are within a 100-meter radius from the subject property. And yet anyone who believes the application will affect their interests were invited to prepare a written submission or be heard at the meeting. So if you consider that the nearest parcel of land is actually the provincially recognized Terrace Beach Cultural Heritage Site Municipal Park, so that little strip of park, which I have to make a comment on the renderings that were shown by Mr. Gregg that were prepared by the developer. It makes it seem like there's a huge forest in front of these cabins. And I think that's a misrepresentation. I mean, I was walking the site just last weekend, and it's a very thin veneer of trees that's on the public park in that location. But anyway, given that one of the proposed variances is to drastically shrink the setback to the public park to only 1 meter, it's clear that the general public's interest will be affected, and as such, public consultation with the community as a whole should take place. When we read Mr. Gregg's staff report to council, he said that council should provide an opportunity for members of the public to provide comment prior to making a decision on the requested variances. The need for public consultation is actually mentioned 4 times in the report. So respectfully, we feel that having notified only 5 parties with 2 business days notice to review these 75 pages of materials that are buried within a 250-page agenda during the height of summer vacation in a pandemic, really makes a mockery of the public consultation process. So that's the first point. We'd like for you to defer your decision on this proposed DVP until adequate public consultation has taken place. It would be nice if we could have a question and answer session, as was the case for lot 15, but at the very least, the changes should be made public to the public at large, because they're really going to completely change the character of the currently undeveloped northern portion of Terrace Beach, and we want to allow the public sufficient time to consider the material and to provide input. The next topic I went into in my letter, I think, has been clarified, because on the actual development permit, it stated that these were not going to be 13 cabins, but they were going to be 13 motel buildings, each containing 2 one-bedroom units. So now we understand that that's a mistake and that that's been corrected. But one concern I still have is the intent for these units to ultimately be stratified and sold off individually, as was the case with the Sabbatical, which is under ownership from this developer, or Terrace Beach Resort? Because if that were to take place, then the current developer essentially would not really have direct control over what is happening on those cabins. There's already an issue that there's with this, the property developer, the property is sort of being managed as a vacation rental as opposed to a resort, and there's actually nobody on site, often during business hours and even after hours, so that when complaints arise, like illegal campfires by their guests or noise disturbances after hours, there's literally nobody supervising the activities and nobody that we've been able to complain to. So that would be a question, is what is the intent of these cabins for the future? And will there be some presence on site managing all these additional guests? Because we're now talking about, 80 to 100 more guests directly on Terrace Beach. So when we purchased our land in 2006, and our lot, if you could put up the building map for Reef Point, but we look directly onto the northern portion of Terrace Beach. Our realtor, Judy Gray, indicated that the best feature about our lot was that it looked onto the northern portion of Terrace Beach, which would never be developed because of the presence of a provincially protected midden there. That remains the case to this day, but now we're talking about 15,000 square feet of cabins. So as you know, Terrace Beach is separated into a south and north section by a headland, and the south part is already developed under Terrace Beach Resort. Terrace Beach North has always been the natural, quiet, undeveloped area where tourists and the like can sit on a log for a moment of peaceful reflection. Couples can enjoy a private moment in nature. Families can have a picnic lunch. These 3-story motel buildings will now span the entire length of Terrace Beach North and will tower over the beach and its users. If you walk on the Wild Pacific Trail portion that's on the municipal park, there's a poster that I included in my letter which says, "Tread lightly, 4,000 years of history lies beneath this forest." So this is a sacred area. The initial application by the developer indicated that the cabins would be built on the previously disturbed portion of the Midden land where Old Peninsula Road is situated, and that they would use a cap and fill technique to avoid further disruption of the Midden. But the buildings that are proposed actually don't fit onto this road. Encroachment into the Midden will actually be necessary. So if you look, the cabins are 24 feet long, but the footprint of Old Peninsula Road is only 20 feet. But they're not just fitting the cabins onto this road, there's actually going to be an access road as well. So in the existing setback scenario where there's 9 feet or 3 meters of setback, we still have we have an encroachment of 39 feet into the previously undisturbed Midden area. If they get granted the 1 meter setback, we're still dealing with 33 feet of encroachment. So the notion that this is just going to sit on the previously disturbed Old Peninsula Road without further disruption is just not true. The developer is also requesting that the setback between these motel buildings and the municipal park be shrunk from 3 meters to 1 meter in order to protect the trees to the east. Well, what about the trees on the west side whose canopies and root systems abut and/or overlap the municipal park? There's really no way for these cabins to be erected with only a 1 meter setback without damaging these trees or their root systems. Will damaged trees need to be sacrificed in the future if they're deemed to be endangering the buildings? The trees are irreplaceable, but prefab cabins are not. If these trees are damaged or lost, the thin veneer of forest, and I've included pictures to show how thin that veneer is. It's very different from the rendering that was shown earlier. So the thin veneer of forest between the beach and these large buildings will be reduced even further. When you're out at sea and you're looking west towards Terrace Beach, you're no longer going to see forest. You're going to see 15,000 square feet of 3-story motel buildings that span all of the previously undeveloped Terrace Beach North. Instead of shrinking the setbacks, why has the developer not been asked to design smaller, site-appropriate buildings? Why not place some of the buildings lengthwise along the road in order to avoid disruption of the surrounding trees and midden? I did include in my letter, for those of you who have time to review it, the schematic that shows actually how close those cabins are going to be to the existing trees on the west if that 1 meter setback is granted. Will there be any guarantee that the lower branches of the trees that are actually in Terrace Beach Cultural Heritage Site Municipal Park will not be limbed to improve sight lines for the guests of the cabins? How will this be prevented? This developer has a history of asking for forgiveness rather than permission. As you're aware, the lodge on lot 35 was illegally operating a 44 guest hotel for years, despite having only guest house zoning prior to the owner seeking CS5 tourist commercial zoning to legitimize the transgression. Finally, there's no justification for reduction of the standard 30-meter setback to the creek on the north end of the property to 8 meters, other than to cram 4 additional motel buildings onto the footprint of Old Peninsula Road. The creek has already been disturbed by the existing path built by the cabin's owner. In conclusion, we oppose DVP 2102 because of the permanent change it will bring to the presently undisturbed and unspoiled landscape of Terrace Beach North. If the developer were to adhere to current setback provisions and restrict the footprint of these proposed cabins to Old Peninsula Road, the alteration of the landscape would be kept to a minimum and damage to the surrounding trees and protected midden would be mitigated. A cabin, as defined in the Merriam-Webster dictionary, is a small one-story dwelling, usually of simple construction. We're no longer talking about cabins, but 3-story motel buildings. The current plan seems designed to allow the highest number of the largest buildings possible with the most rental units in this ecologically and archaeologically sensitive space, all for maximum profit to the developer. How does the community benefit from this? The cabins are going to be prefab and built in a factory that's not even in town. This is going to be high-end tourist accommodation, and it does nothing for the local housing shortage. The proposed trails traversing the property will primarily be used by the guests of the cabins, and yet will be built and maintained by the taxpayers of the District of Ucluelet. The designated public parking at the south end of the property will also likely be used by the guests of the cabins, because each motel building will have only parking space despite housing up to 6 guests. Can the developer not be asked to further redesign these buildings so that they can suit the site, adhere to existing setback provisions, and mitigate the impact to surrounding natural and archaeologic features? The variance we're most concerned about is this 1 meter setback to the municipal park, which we feel is completely inadequate, considering that this is in a provincially protected heritage conservation area. We're only one voice, but the community at large is really totally unaware of this proposed development, which threatens Terrace Beach North, one of the last unspoiled natural public beaches in Ucluelet. Please allow the public to have a say before rendering your decision on this. And respectfully, that's our submission from Michelle Belanger, Mike Foy. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for those questions, Michelle. I don't know who would like to answer some of those, whether it's Ian, the rep, or if you don't mind standing at the microphone there, Ian. I've written down 5 or 6 questions here. Perhaps you can discuss building on the road and no disruption is one of my questions.
Okay. We designed the cabins with the foundations to adhere to the 3 meter setback to reduce compaction of the roots. The variance to 1 meter is for a cantilever deck. So there is actually no footprint inside of that asked setback. The footprint is roughly 300 square feet, 315 square feet, so roughly the size of 2 parking spaces. The height of the structure is 34 feet. CS5 zoning allows for 39 feet, so we are also accounting for the 3 feet of cap and fill, which would bring the total height of the cabin to, excuse me, my throat's dry, 37 feet, still under the required height limit. What else can I talk about this?
Another one was Michelle made a comment regarding, what happens if you damage a tree? Are you going to be removing it?
Well, prior to receiving building permit, we have to have an arborist on site to determine whether or not there will be a disturbance, and I assume if it is going to be an issue that we will not be issued a building permit for that cabin.
Okay. Thank you for that. And so so what we're seeing before us here is you've been building to suit the site, and Michelle made reference regarding the existing roadway.
Yes.
And maybe you can speak about that a little bit.
Okay, well, the existing roadway is not just the asphalt. There's a road right-of-way, and that entire area had a force main underneath it. So the soil has been disturbed to quite a depth, enough to get a main sewer line in there.
Mm-hmm.
We have received alteration permits from the archaeological branch. So all work will have an archaeologist on site. And so the laneway, or the existing cabin, or the cabins we're proposing, are on the asphalt portion. The deck's cantilever beyond that asphalt portion, and the minimum required laneway width will travel along the road right-of-way next to the new Midden Parcel.
My other couple of questions will be for Mr. Gregg, but are there any other questions for?
Ian, is there encroachment into the midden of these cabins and the right of way?
No, there is not.
Okay. And where do you suspect the overflow parking to go? I say this because of BlackRock has 133 units and it has 133 parking stalls. So there's always an issue there. So where would you provide overflow parking for this?
Currently, in the zoning, we are providing enough parking for all the cabins. There's also additional parking, which is possible by the black sea can that you'll see on the existing old road right-of-way. So we have parking up that laneway on a one-way going out to Peninsula Road to handle the overflow.
Before I go to Mr. Gregg, are there any other questions for Ian? Oh, Councillor Hoare.
Just to clarify, only I believe it's the fourth one of the variances, which is the one around the mixed-use resort condo future one. That's the only one that actually has the arborist stated in the variance, that the arborist will be on site and will certify that there aren't any trees that are disturbed for that one. But I don't see that arborist. I mean, you say there's going to be one on site, but I just don't see it kind of guaranteed. And I am concerned about the root systems because, as we know, trees don't just have one pipe down to the water, as it were.
Absolutely. Every care was taken with the tree survey to avoid the impact underneath the canopy of the tree, which is typically the extent of the root system as well. And on top of that, the raft slab system will distribute the weight. If it is determined that...
Can you just speak to that system for a moment? The lap system?
Sorry, everybody's...
No, I just wanted, because
it's basically a foundation that is a floating slab over top of an engineered fill. So what it does is it distributes the weight as opposed to a typical footing system where it's 20 inches wide in the perimeter of the building. There's a lot more forces and less distribution of that weight. The raft slab allows us to mitigate that impact.
And the arborist, I kind of sorry I would get like that, but the arborist, if you just finish that off, because as Councillor Hoare mentioned, the arborist was mentioned in the one last building towards Peninsula Road, but where the arborist is throughout the program and would it be involved in your building permit process?
That was my understanding, and if that is not true, I'm sure we can add that in.
Okay, well, I got a couple of questions for Mr. Gregg there, so
okay.
We'll follow up with that one. Are there any other ones for Ian? Thank you, Ian, for answering those questions, and Mr. Gregg, we got a couple for you. Since we're talking about arborists, maybe you can speak to that on the rest of the development.
Through the mayor, certainly that condition can be added to the development permit to comply to basically to apply to all 13 of the cabins that are being proposed in that area. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And the other one, there was mention, Michelle made a mention that her concerns regarding the mail out to those affected. Are you able to maybe talk about, excuse me, how notification occurred?
Through the mayor, so the notification Thank you. Thank you for the reminder. The notification for development variance permit is to properties within 100 meters. So there may have been some confusion because of the notification as well. And so this affects the development. The variance affects the cabins property. The notification for the public hearing for the lodge property would have covered a different area. So there may have been people who've perceived that they were being left out or excluded from that notification, but it did cover some different properties. But I'd also point out that and if I could maybe get the slideshow or the slides up again. I think it's the second to last slide shows this, just the site plan. That the cabin locations have not changed since they were originally presented to council. You know, it was like December originally went to council with and that one. Thank you. Could we go to the site plan? Because I don't think my clicker is advancing the slides. There we are. So the location of those cabins along the old road right of way, it was identified initially when this went to council. There would be variances required for those. So the plan that's been put out there was part of the public hearing. There was considerable discussion of this. So this isn't essentially new variances that have been identified. It's simply now time to be addressing those. So we did give the notification, as is our standard, to the properties within 100 meters for the opportunity for people to comment on the variances.
Okay, and yeah, I think you covered the consultation part then. Did I miss anything on the questions, Councillor McEwen?
Yes, through the mayor, another question Michelle had was the intention of these buildings. Will they be put into a strata? If you know the answer to that?
Through the mayor, I couldn't answer that question. That really, that's maybe one that the property owner could answer, whether they intend to retain ownership of them or to sell them as investment properties. There's the zoning. If I could advance the slide one more, please. This is in the zoning of the area was put in place some years ago, and so this is the original Reef Point Adventure Station diagram that was, I think, the late 90s when this was being proposed. And I'll just highlight. So this is the park along. This is Terrace Beach here. So the municipal park is next to it. What's shown here? This is the circulation that's shown on the old Peninsula Road right of way. And so that at the time the zoning was put in place and the entire site was put into the tourist commercial zoning designation, it is noted that the archaeological site is noted. There's some parking areas on either side that were shown. I think they show 15 cabins along on both sides of the road right of way in this diagram along the old Peninsula Road. So the zoning was put in place that wasn't dedicating both sides of that as park at that time. And as we pointed out, that with the discussions between the owner and the Iqaluit First Nation, essentially it's gone in that direction, which we see as a very positive thing. But to just to explain that, that zoning, that tourist commercial zoning, does apply to all of the site currently, with the setting aside it as park. I think defining that with park, in public park zoning would be appropriate as a future step. But that's part of the context of how we look at this proposal.
Do you have any other additional questions? Okay, no. Okay, well, thank you for answering those questions. I know there's more people that want some input. You'll have your opportunity. I just wanted to make sure we just rattled off those few questions. Are there any more, any additional input from Zoom?
Hi, Andrew.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, Andrew. Good afternoon.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking time to listen to what I have to say. My name's Andrew Dick, and I'm the owner of 338, which is lot 34, directly next to the lodge property called the Cabins, and I'm here representing myself and my wife Alicia Dick. Some of the things I have to say, I think are probably repeating some of what Michelle has to say. I was one of the 5 lucky winners of a golden ticket that actually got a public consultation notice to their front door. So I guess that's the first point that I really need to raise, both that and the actual notice itself, just as regards the way the information is displayed on there. If this is going to go hopefully out to other people so they get a chance to have their say as well if a decision is delayed. I feel very much that something that this representation of the development is lacking. It's lacking any kind of illustration or picture of what the light pollution is going to be like either at sunset. I'm aware a lot of people come down to the beach. Many locals who live around me come down. And just the effect of how that'll actually be turning it from sort of a dark space as it is at the moment into a very much lit up space. As I say, I live next to the cabins at the moment, and often their lights are on 24 hours a day. So I'm aware how intrusive that can be. I did design our own home to look into the trees. It was a part of the decision on building in this way, and now I'm basically going to be looking onto a road and what is essentially the roofs of a motel. But I do think that people would really benefit from that drawing showing the light pollution onto the beach, so people who are local can come down to the beach at not just 2 days notice. A lot of people are very busy, as has been mentioned. It was a pandemic. And have a look at the details as they're being proposed. Like what is the actual difference of a 1 meter setback to a 3 meter setback, and so on and so forth. You know, show us how much light's coming out the glazing, how it is going to permanently change the nature of the beach and the surrounding area, the national park, and you can see the effect it'll probably have on animals as well. Another thing I'd like to raise is a lot has been talked about trees as if they're something that just grows out the ground individually and has nothing to do with vegetation cover, which breaks down and feed those trees. The water lost from falling on the cabins hard standing, is it going to be drained away elsewhere? Is it going to be drained back into the land? Are the trees going to lose basically both a nutrition, a food source, and access to water because of these things? Obviously, every meter that a setback is changed is going to be loss of vegetation, not just trees. The trees can remain, but if their food source is gone, they live on more than just water. And I feel that's something that hasn't been raised by the designer, and could maybe answer some questions for people. People can have an image of what that will actually look like. Also, looking at your public notice that came to our door, I'm looking at drawing C at the moment, and I believe that's you were referring. It shows the 4 southernmost cabins, and unless I'm mistaken, you were referring to a ditch. But in your own drawing, it's even labelled as a creek. So I'm not sure if that suddenly has had some kind of a change where traditionally it's always been a creek. I'm not sure what would turn a creek into a ditch, unless perhaps it had been blocked by building material, fill or ingress or something of that nature, which I think maybe you might be alighting to there. So I would like some clarity on whether that is a creek, a water source, or if it is just some kind of a runoff ditch. Forgive me, I'm reading from notes as well, and this is the first time I Zoom. I'm not really very computer competent. And just really listening to the meeting as a whole, it was nice to see some of the previous developers that you'd talked about that were actually interested in increasing setbacks instead of decreasing setbacks. It was seen as a gesture to the community. And I think that was something that, if this development is to go ahead, would be really appreciated to the community at large, both the residents here and the people who come and visit from elsewhere. Obviously, both sides are going to argue that they're trying for the minimum impact possible, and
Okay, well, thank you. Ian, I'll start with you. Mr. Kennington, please. Could you speak to the creek/ditch and perhaps maybe give some background on your biological report you probably have regarding that?
All I can say is that the environmental consultant labeled it as a ditch, and I'm not an environmental consultant, but if you follow it up, it is literally taking runoff from the old road right-of-way into what everyone would determine as a ditch by looking at it if they were not an environmental consultant.
I guess my point is the fact is that is it Dave Clough that's been doing the work, or
No, it was Aquaparian.
Okay, so Aquaparian did the work and looked at the property to deal with any kind of water courses, and you have that report and
That's correct.
deemed it to be a ditch and not a creek.
That's correct.
Although it was labeled as a creek.
I have
No, that's
no
fine.
idea
I'm speaking out loud here. So
Yeah.
okay, and
If I could address the runoff.
yeah, please go ahead.
That's
That
a
was my
very
next
good
one.
point. We all know that asphalt does not absorb water. We would be removing the asphalt, and that would allow groundwater to permeate, rainwater to permeate into groundwater, which would in fact be better for the trees.
Okay, no, thank you. And then he also made a comment regarding light pollution.
Light pollution, that's a good question. I think the easiest thing to do is to go down to Terrace Beach and look at the existing cabins that are there, and also up at the residences on Reef Point Road, including the fellow who asked the question, and that'll give you a pretty good idea of what we're looking at as far as light pollution.
Okay. Any other questions for Ian? No? Okay. Thank you, Ian. You're off the hook this time. No, you're good. Unless you wanted to make a follow-up.
I've got a question that follows up on the light pollution question,
Yep.
which might be for Mr. Gregg. Do we have a dark skies policy in our bylaws? Or perhaps in the new draft OCP?
I'm not going to try and quote sections of the draft OCP, but yes, I'm not going to quote into the details of it. Those typically start to deal with things like fixtures, having the globe versus the cutoff light to try and, it doesn't necessarily define or shape the placement of development, because all development will have some artificial light. It follows housing, it follows commercial uses, but things like what are the fixtures that are used, and are they shining up towards the light or shining outwards or shining down to light the areas needed? Those are typically where those sort of policies and bylaws focus. The other is then sort of the larger scale question of where do you locate development? Is it everywhere in the municipality, or do you have areas of green space that is set aside where you don't have buildings with lights on them? And so that sort of larger pattern is also part of where the dark sky policy tends to sort of kick in. Is are you having significant places which don't have development immediately around them? And as I highlighted, showing the old plan for the adventure station, that this area had for some time. We start with looking at what decisions were made in the past and what was the zoning, and that the entire site has had some expectation and zoning in place to allow for development. They've kept it to the one strip along the old road as opposed to moving into other areas. It's an excellent question. What's going to be the impact? It definitely is a change that's proposed to add 13 cabins there, and so I think the comment of looking at how there's a similar development with cabins fronting some forest on not park land, but some trees were left along the other southern end of Terrace Beach, and that yes, it will definitely be a change to have new cabins in there. But the impact of it, no, that hasn't been analyzed, and our policies don't specifically prohibit development because of the dark skies question at this point in time. But that's something that we could certainly, council can look at if we want to increase that sensitivity. Then there's different ways of approaching that, and the OCP speaks to that in broad terms.
Any other questions for Mr. Gregg? Okay, thank you, Mr. Gregg. Okay. I know there's people in the audience probably eager to get one more kick of the can with any Zoom. Any follow-up?
Actually, Michelle Bellinger had her hand up again.
Well, I'll go back to the first. She's had a couple of runs there. So, any input by email?
Not at this point.
Perfect. Okay, I'm going to open the floor to the audience here. If anybody would like to make any comments, maybe if there's any new questions. There's been some really good questions here, but if there's anything that has not been heard or asked. Barb, that's right, it's your hand. If you don't mind going to the microphone, Barb. Name and address when you get there. I should know both by now, but. How's Peter doing?
Fine.
Good.
Barbara Schramm.
You're on there.
Barbara Schramm, 1958 Bay Street.
Thank you.
Everyone here probably knows I'm extremely interested in trails. So I would like to ask questions about trails on this property because there's been a right-of-way through this property, as we saw in that early slide of Reef Point Estates, ever since there was development here, but requests to actually build the trail have been denied. So how could that be guaranteed in this proposal so that the right-of-way doesn't just sit on a map and never get built? I'm extremely concerned that this is actually put on title, anchored to something like an occupancy or a building permit process, so that the connection to Peninsula and the connection to Spring Cove could actually be built. I also see on the map that there's a purple future building that seems to completely block the trail from crossing at the crosswalk to Spring Cove. So how does that not prevent or delete the trail in the future? I don't see a way around that, the way that map is drawn. And the trail through to Peninsula from the north end of the row, he said could go through overflow parking. So does that also block the trail from going through at the north? So if someone could speak to the deliverable of trails, I would be really happy to hear that.
Okay, great question.
Oh, and also parking at the south end of the string of cabins would be my wish list, because as we see at Terrace Beach Resort, overflow parking is in Heatinkus Park. People won't walk 13 cabins away to park. They'll park 2 cabins away at the beach. So, okay.
Great questions. Thank you. Did you want to jump on those ones? I'm going to get a glass of water while you're doing those, answering those questions.
Thank you. Could I have the slide, the site plan up again? Excellent questions, and I didn't highlight the trails, but I will now. If we could go, there's a site plan near the. I'll give you the slide number. We have slide number 9, please. That shows it a little better, a little more zoomed in. Essentially, it's an excellent question about the trails. So the dotted line here, this is the existing Spring Cove Trail, which comes up to where the crosswalk is by Boardwalk Boulevard. There's an orange dotted line that's shown here, which is trail. So that is public pathway that's being proposed, and it also includes what is there's some existing trail down, but a new connection to what is Wild Pacific Trail within the municipal parkland. This also goes up the old road right-of-way, tees up the lodge property to Reef Point, but also goes out to Peninsula Road on this end. So those are guaranteed now. If you look at page 117 of the council agenda is a page of a restrictive covenant which the owners have signed, and it is in our hands. It says 4B, the grantor, which is the owners, at their sole cost will have, basically, they will not be able to get occupancy on their cabins until they do meet a bunch of conditions, including they need to do the subdivision consolidation to create those parcels, but also at the time they're registering that, register a statutory right-of-way. The question talked about a right-of-way on the old Peninsula Road. There's no public access to that. That's privately owned land right now. And when people walk down the old Peninsula Road, as many of us do from time to time, we're trespassing. In the future, they will provide, the grantor at its sole cost will register as a charge against the title of the land a statutory right-of-way with a minimum width of 5 meters on terms satisfactory to the district, authorizing construction and maintenance of pedestrian trails and public access to and through all areas of the land shown in dashed lines and labeled Terrace Beach public access, proposed pedestrian public access, proposed public access easement, or proposed public trail on the development plans. And that's the development plan that's on the screen now. So that commitment is in hand as part of what they had offered with the zoning. So essentially, no occupancy for the cabins until all of that's complete, and that would provide permanent legal access, public access to build and maintain those trails as part of the municipal park and trail network.
You have a little follow-up? We have to go back to the microphone. He can ask. We would just say what Barb asked there, if you don't mind.
Certainly. The question was the difference between the right-of-way and the permission to construct. So that legal document that we now have got a covenant on the property, meaning the property can't develop until they provide that statutory right-of-way, which will authorize construction and maintenance of public pedestrian trails, pathways, blah, 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 blah. That wording is in the covenant now signed by the owners with all of the 9 properties in question here.
What about under a building?
So the purple area of the future building in there, essentially there's 2 ways of doing with the right-of-way. One is to define, because it hasn't been surveyed and that subdivision hasn't been registered yet. The covenant that we have now essentially tees that up, that they don't get occupancy until we all agree to it, including we have walked that alignment with the manager of Heritage and Culture with the Coolithat government, and they have provided a letter that's in the agenda back in January saying that they look forward to working with the district on the trail. We will need permits from the province for constructing the trail because it is a known archaeological site that it crosses through, so we need to go through all of that. So, and as well, they have a future development permit there. There's sort of 2 ways of going about it, either registering a blanket over the purple area where that future building is, and then we can shrink it once the trail is constructed, or simply between now and when it's registered, agree on where the trail will be located, and they design the building around it. But the covenant in place basically means that we will have a minimum 5 meter wide swath following roughly what's that dashed orange line for trails connecting Spring Cove to Terrace Beach and north towards Little Beach.
Thank you. I think it's a big win. All those, the trails. I think it's positive. So it's in black and white, Ms. Sharan. If you don't mind, oh, sorry, what was that? Okay. Wow. We have the same lens as you do. So this has been well vetted, and I know it's fine. It's good to ask the questions. I just want to reassure you that we're all doing our homework here. It's getting 6 o'clock. If you don't mind, do you mind if I just take another little 5-minute recess here? And can I make a motion to make a 5-minute recess?
I'll second.
All in favor? Okay. Thank you. I know it's dragging on everybody, but we'll just. Okay, thank you for your patience, everyone. And I'm just going to resume. Any other comments from the public? Yep. Answer, go to the mic, please. Thanks. Is anything really safe?
I'll do what Bruce did, so you can hear me loud and clear.
Perfect.
So my name is Jens Hadak. I own two businesses in direct vicinity to the proposal, and I also happen to live there on 302 Reef Point Road. And I pretty much walk this beach every morning, either with my wife or my two little toddlers. So it's I like to call it my backyard. But yeah, I just have some thoughts prepared here on paper, printed on 13 point, because it's almost the middle of the season, or we're past it. So there's that for you guys. So I don't hope you don't mind if I read off the paper here a little bit. So this town has seen a major change in only a few decades, transforming from fishing and logging as the primary economic drivers into a tourism-centered economy. Early on, any development that helped establish Ucluelet as a tourism destination was welcome, prioritizing the investment over low-impact strategies from today's perspective. After a decade of exceptional growth, we reached a point where we shouldn't take for granted the thing we have going for us, but to carefully examine each project against the status quo and future tourism as we know it. People of this community voiced concerns about Uber-developments on multiple occasions. The Canadian Princess expansion came to mind with its 4-story building, the bankrupt hotel development across from it, and lastly, a proposed development across Big Beach featuring, well, formerly a 4-story building, and I'm really happy to see how the developer moved back to a 3-story building and actually is adding some green space and increased setbacks that you all fought for, so I appreciate that. Ucluelet's hallmark tourism drivers within its district are 3 beaches and the Wild Pacific Trail. That's it. Apart from external factors, of course, such as sport fishing in the Broken Group Islands and the Pacific Rim National Park Reserve. Terrace Beach is a shared commodity in this town, enjoyed by locals and visitors alike, and a major asset to all tourism-based businesses, both directly and indirectly. The proposed development with its level of density requiring the reduction of setbacks is outdated even before it started. 3 years in the making, it fails to factor in the new kind of tourist emerging from this pandemic. There is a clear desire for sustainability, low-impact tourism developments, and prospect tourists are measuring selected destinations against these requirements. Direct feedback from my guest favor Ucluelet over our for our quiet beaches and trails over a high-density tourism experience elsewhere. So my questions are, how are setback reductions that in return enable high-density developments conducive to the experience, enjoyment, and protection of Terrace Beach? It's a kind of open-ended question, I get it. How are 80 plus people in immediate proximity to the smallish beach supporting the character of this area to both locals and visitors alike? And also light pollution came up a couple of times. What we forgot to factor in are the cars that are driving down there and parking, shining their projector headlights way out into the waterways and along the tree lines. As we know, they have no cut-off projector headlights to read the traffic signs. So all of this will just be one big theater stage. Undoubtedly, this development is being sold as progress, but it should be distinguished between merely taking a course as set out by the developer instead of being the progressive, low-impact, sustainable development the entire tourism sector all over the world is reportedly heading towards. I would like Mayor and Council to, first of all, decline the development variance permit in Schedule B, seeking to reduce the rear yard setback from 3 meters down to 1. Decline the development variance permit Schedule C, reducing the watercourse setback from 30 meters down to 8. Find a way to work within the current setbacks fronting Terrace Beach, and work with the developer to lower density from the proposed 13 multi-story buildings down to 6. it is one of the few places of refuge with an increasingly densified city core where we locals can recluse to after busy evenings or early mornings. As we all know, we are pretty tired of this season already, and development such as this really doesn't support this enjoyment in any regard. There are only a few places left where we can go to and just like recharge our batteries, and the way this is heading, in my opinion, is not one of them. Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you. Was there a question in there? Yeah, if you want to make a comment towards it, for sure.
Point out that the density for this development is 0.06 FAR. CS5 allows for more than 10 times that at 70 FAR. Single-family residential is 0.35 R, which is roughly 6 times higher density than this development. I think we are already proposing a low development solution here with the ability to build a BlackRock-style hotel there. We've worked very, very hard to keep that density low, keep view corridors between the buildings, which is why we didn't rotate them sideways. We really did do our best to address a lot of these concerns, which we knew were coming. I just wanted to add that calling this a high-density development is a bit misleading.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, first of all, I don't appreciate the consent of I'm trying to mislead the public here. Thank you very much. The question is, why is the CS5 tourist commercial in the first place? Those, as we can see, the Reef Point, was it Adventure Park or something like this, where the CS5 zoning was part of, is from the 1990s. I think times have moved on, and I really can't see how something of a CS5 BlackRock tourist commercial building can fit this place, nor should it. Nor just because you can do something doesn't mean it's the right thing to do it. And I love that the current developer for Lot 16 actually is trying to do the right thing. I'd like to see this from this project moving forward as well.
Thank you for the comments. Any other comments from the gallery? Carrie, come on up there. You could dance your way over there. You'll have to turn it on. Everyone's been very polite in turning it off. It's a polite group. You're raised right. It's okay.
Is that on or? Yeah. All right. Kerry Harwood, 1136 Coral Way. Good to see everybody again. Thank you for having me. I just want to echo the comments of Nellie and Jens and Michelle, and also David and Elisa and Anne, who all submitted their letters and their comments. Yeah, and Ian, I want to thank you for the time and energy that you put into this project, and thank you for talking with me back in January. I do want just to say that, yeah, I do understand as well that we are building a lower density than certainly could be there, and I want to acknowledge that. At the same time, just given that is such a unique spot of our town and our country even, that 13 units is still, in my opinion, too many. And if not just for our tourism, but just for the animals. Like, I think that's something that, those animals can't speak here, but how many children are going to be trampling on the seagrass bed, and how many crustaceans are going to be stomped by children, and people just looking at the beach, and how many eagles and everything else are just going to be disturbed by that many people running around that beach. Right now, it is an absolute blessing to be able to walk down there and maybe see 5 people. And with, I'd say 7 units, that is personally the most units that I would love to see or like to see on this land, which would still be adding some development. And I feel again, I don't know the numbers, but I just feel that would be a good compromise by allowing that land to be developed and still keeping the peace, I suppose. And so, yeah, other than that, I guess it's just wanting to make sure that if we're giving setback exemptions to this property, where does that, where do we draw that line for future development and future properties? I know that, my property is within my limits, and I will abide by that, of course. And last but not least, is there any last but not least? Jovi did want to say a few things. I guess the last thing I want to say is I would just hate for this to be, 13 units to be developed and then all of them just sold off to the highest bidder and more problems to be created while we're really trying to create solutions here. So thank you for your time.
Appreciate your comments, Carrie. Again, open up the floor. Are there any other comments, new comments? Seeing none. Okay, I'll go back to, I think you said Michelle was on Zoom.
Michelle does have her hand raised again.
Okay, I'll welcome her back.
Michelle, you should be on now.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you've given me so much time to speak already, and I'm not going to speak much more. It's getting late. I just wanted to clarify one point that was made about the public consultation piece of this. So when Bruce spoke about the opportunity for the public at large to speak as part of the public hearing that took place in the springtime, that wasn't actually the case. Like, the only time the public was notified about this, and I understand that the proposal has not substantively been changed, we were actually asked to limit our comments to the CS5 zoning for lots 35 and 37, and we actually weren't able to address the issues with respect to these proposed new because that was taken off the agenda to be discussed at a later date. So in fact, the general public hasn't had an opportunity to be notified about this and to speak to this. So I would really appreciate if there was some opportunity for the public at large to be able to do so, because as many people stated today, I mean, this Terrace Beach North is a little jewel to the community. And once the character of it is lost, like we can never get it back. So I really don't think a rush decision should be made. And I would really hope that, all residents of Euclid would get an opportunity to provide input. And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Okay, I'm going to turn to you, Mr. Gregg, if you just want to make a comment regarding Michelle's comments regarding lack of public consultation or public hearing.
Through the mayor, that my comment previously was really about the awareness that I think that the development and the proposed components of the development have been sort of broadly advertised, and there was a significant involvement in the public hearing and community awareness of essentially what the proposal is. The notification for the development variance permit, as I said earlier, was according to our policy, which follows provincial legislation on notification requirements, and so this really is, this evening, this is an opportunity for the public to provide input, as council is hearing now. If council wish to do additional, then certainly that is within your purview to refer it for further input and advertisement, I guess, of that. But this is an opportunity, and I'm not sure what else.
Okay, that's fine. I just want to get clarity on the comment. Any other questions from any of the councillors? Again, just out of being due process, I just want to last time on Zoom. Any more hands or any emails?
There are no hands raised at this time on Zoom. There is no new community input via email.
Okay, well, it's on to us now here. So we do have a couple recommendations. Or, Councillor Hoare, you made a comment, the arborist comment.
Yes, I'd like to ensure that the arborist is on site. I'm finding the email that Bruce sent earlier. So it would be adding to the DP. So I don't know if we want to do these as two separates. It's the DVP and the DP. Or do you want the wording for...
Mr. Roenberg, can you help us out there? I'm just... So...
Okay, so you have there are two recommended motions. One's regarding the development variance permit.
Yep.
And then the others regarding the DP. My understanding is that the development variance, that the DP is contingent on the development variance permit. Am I correct about that?
I don't know why you sit down at all, Mr. Craig.
Correct. The development permit shows a plan for building locations and whatnot in the site plan that's shown there. In order for them to have that permit, it does hinge on the variances. So if if council, I think, should deal with the development variance permit and the requested variances first, and then with the outcome of that, see if if there's modifications to the development permit. I believe the condition you were considering around having further specifics around an arborist would be appropriate on as a condition of the development permit.
But I don't need to do that right now because we have to deal with the variances first.
Okay, well, let's deal with the variance. So, we're hearing some things. Do people want to move this along, or what's it? Yeah, please do.
Sorry, I just want to say that what I'm hearing most of is that, we hear from the public, and I just want to say that in, the past months out there talking to other people in the community, I think the hearing that we had the other day, what we got from that hearing, just like what we're getting in this moment, is a lot of what we've heard before. We're hearing the same, the same concerns coming forward. And I feel as though I feel that we would be hearing the same things should we, prolong and hear again. The concerns are pretty clear, and I'm just comfortable in making some action on it. That's all.
Moving ahead?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Okay, well, if you're comfortable about that, then there is as staff has indicated and developed, there is a recommendation to move number 1. And if someone would like to move recommendation number 1 so we can deal with the arborist issue for number 2. Am I looking at that correct?
I've got it. I will move that council authorize issuance of development variance permit 3090-20 DVP 21-02.
Is there a seconder?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. And then we have the development permit. Councillor Hoare?
Sorry, phone went asleep. Okay, so I believe I'm adding this just to the end of this. So I'm moving that council authorize issuance of development permit 3060-20 DP 20-17, and prior to the issuance of a building permit, the owner shall provide a report by a qualified consulting arborist for review and approval by the district, assessing the potential impact on the root zones of adjacent trees, both on site or on adjacent properties. Recommendations should address whether the location or footprint of the cabins needs to be adjusted to ensure the long-term health of the trees, and any measures that would be necessary to reduce hazards within the proposed development and the adjacent parks.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Thank you for that one. The 12.31 is just information, correct, Mr. Rotenberg? Yeah, no, the next one is just information. And then 12.4, it's going to be a verbal report regarding Municipal Insurance Association of BC's 34th annual meeting.
Yes, exactly. So annually, the Municipal Insurance Association has their AGM, which is right before UBCM. We're looking for one council member to be designated to vote at that meeting. I believe that they need a resolution that says specifically that. So what we're looking for here is a resolution to designate one council member to attend this Municipal Insurance Association annual general meeting, listen and vote on, I believe, their board.
I believe Councillor McEwen's been on there for a number of years. Have you hit your maximum yet?
No, this is just a representative from our council attending the MIA's AGM. So I've only done it once, which was last year when UBCM was virtual. And again, it's virtual this year, and I'm willing to do it again to be our rep at that AGM. But I'm also willing to let someone else have an opportunity.
I think we're probably supportive of you.
I can make the motion that we have Marilyn attend the Municipal Insurance Association 34th Annual General Meeting on our behalves.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. We appreciate you taking that on, Marilyn. Not that you have more time than the rest of us, but it's
As a subsection to that particular conversation, because MIABC deals with UBCM, and I am looking for a motion to approve me attending via in person as opposed to virtually.
Oh, that's easy. There we go. Well,
I'll make that motion.
okay, perfect.
I'll
Okay,
second
perfect.
that.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Well, we look forward to having you there. Man, hopefully you got that big smile when you're there too, so it'll be good. So thank you for making time. It'll be nice for all of us to be together.
Anything to get out of a truck day, just saying.
Well, you could just, okay. Moving along here, resolution tracker. Any questions for information? Any big showstoppers? Councillor McEwen?
Go ahead.
I have a few questions, and most of them are for Mr. Craig. The first one is the Historical Society. Just wondering if there's any progress there. That might not be
That was
Mr.
my
Gregg. That might be Miss Fortune.
Still in their court.
Through the mayor, it's still in their court. I've prodded a little bit, saying, "Hey, what's going on?" But it's still in their court at this stage.
Okay, thank you. It's just that it's dated September 25th, 2018.
I'm well aware of that. So just for a quick background, Councillor McEwen, we have between September of that year and now, we have had some progress. We were able to present them with a potential lease, and we did work through that with the lawyer. And so that our previous CAO, Mr. Boyson, and myself did meet with them in January to try and move this forward. It's in their hands to get agreement, or if they have any questions or concerns, back to us, and then we can do the final report. But it has adjusted since that time.
Progress is wonderful. Thank you.
Progress is wonderful. Thank you.
And my second one is the second item, which is 354 Forbes Road, which is Mr. Kasmar. Just wondering if there's some progress on that application.
Through the mayor, progress that they are, I believe, very close to getting occupancy, that there were a couple of conditions that the architect had stipulated you wanted to see cleared up. There's some areas because it's a provisional occupancy, some areas in the lower level which were to remain empty because they didn't have the fire separations complete. There were some materials being stored in there, and so it was a matter of the owner needed to remove those before the architect would sign off on that. Off the top of my head, I don't know if the documentation, it may in the last days have come through. Our building inspector is in Euclid 1 day a week on Thursdays, so and we have quite a few permits that he's doing inspections. So we don't have a lot of crossover. So forgive me, I'm not aware of the up-to-date current 100% status of this. It may be in hand, or it may still be outstanding, and another matter of prodding to achieve that.
The word of the day.
I'm going to follow up on that one because it kind of looked occupied last week.
Yeah, well, we can follow up with that. I know that it's an active file for bylaw and as well as for the building inspector, and he was off on holidays, and I believe that they're all working together best they can.
Okay, thank you. And can I do a couple more?
Yeah, for sure. It's all yours.
A couple below that is, and perhaps Councillor Kemps can address this one. Staff working with BlackRock Oceanfront Resort to identify unique solutions for navigation to the resort. Just wondering if this is still an issue.
It is a very big issue, but I think we're going to be working on it when we do the Peninsula Road upgrades. And that'll be a conversation. And when Forbes Road gets poked through, that'll be a conversation.
Okay, great.
You are patient.
And just wondering about the where Lot 13 is at right now, Mr. Gregg.
Through the chair, the developer, Mr. McLean, has received a preliminary layout assessment that was issued by the approving officer some months ago. Essentially, the ball is in his court. There was some movement on site with an excavator to start to, then their initial step was going to be leveling out an area to bring in some show units. When I last spoke with Mr. McLean, which was now a couple weeks ago, he was indicating that there was some, just the timing of what it would take to get from the factory. Those units is taking longer than it had pre-COVID or what they'd expected. So he was exploring other options for pre-sales. But essentially, he has the preliminary layout assessment, which, as I mentioned with the other question around the marketing of units, that he could start those pre-sales legally now. But other than that, I can't answer his current status. Essentially, it's in his court.
I could do a little update. He's doing an open house towards the end of September at the resort, so it'll get some.
That's good to know.
Moving.
Yeah, and he was hoping to be able to do that in one of the show homes, but due to COVID, he's indicating he wanted to do a little bit of a meet and greet there.
Because he's dealing with a company in the Okanagan, I believe, for his units. It's unfortunate he didn't pick a company on Vancouver Island.
I don't think it matters where you go. It's a massive waiting list. They become very popular. So we'll look forward to his end of September. You got another one there?
I have one more.
Okay.
Page 155. This is all the temporary use permits for the mobile homes, or whatever they were. I noticed that 6 are still waiting for applicants to meet conditions, and only 2 have been completed, and we're halfway through August. That's maybe a signal that it wasn't a successful campaign, or we started too late. Through the mayor.
And through the mayor, what we've seen maybe is that we had people who applied for it in case they needed it for an employee and then ended up not needing it. We've heard some stories around that. Again, as a pilot, this is curious to watch, and it's surprising that only 2 have actually been put to use, and we'll see how that plays out, or alternatively, whether they haven't officially been issued and completed their permit, but however may be using it without having met all of their conditions to receive their permit, including the deposit. There may be some of that happening too. where they misunderstood that a council motion, yes, authorizing issuance of this permit was all that they needed, and didn't read the fine print, if you will. So, and there's been follow-up with the permit holders or the applicants on that. And again, as it wraps up, our intention, as we've expressed to council previously, would report back on, and I think that should include some of those, comments from talking to the people who got the permits, but how it went, and if they weren't using it, it would be great to try and understand why.
I could add on to that. I was one of the permit holders, and there's a few of us that have did the same thing, just expecting that we might use it, but it ended up that we didn't have to use it, but we were so grateful that we had that to fall back on. So it's great that out of that many top users that didn't have to use it, really.
Or that there isn't enough staff to actually hire.
That is actually the key. Yeah, it's kind of depressing.
It'll be great to see an analysis of the whole experiment after the fact. Thank you.
Because those permits expire in November. Yeah. And so we're expecting that we'll have some conversation about that in November, because I imagine those few that are active in it are going to want, because I just actually got an email from one of them asking, it ends at the end of November, and wondering how can we extend the permit. So that's definitely probably an October conversation we'll be having at a council meeting.
The intention was that this be, for summer seasonal workers, that it not be an ongoing rolling, year-round accommodation. This isn't intended to be the solution to all housing issues in
but
town.
there's
And so I think initially, as we presented it or conceived of it, was to do the 6-month permit. After it wrapped up, then look at, okay, how did that go, and report out to council before the end of the year, with the anticipation of, if council wished to do it again, we would start it much earlier in the year, ahead of the season, so there was a little more time for people to apply and for us to handle it all before, so council could be in a position to look at issuing permits ahead of when they were needed.
But to be clear, that anybody who had previously been looking to have these permits extended throughout the winter season, that was not the intent, and that those kind of units are not meant to be dwelled in year-round, and that was never the point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Any other questions regarding that? Okay, those are good questions. Okay, moving along. Where am I? 12.6, check listing. Any questions for Miss Monteith? Are we all good? It was for information. Okay. Moving to other business. Any? Seeing none. Question period. And Mr. Roenberg, can you make a note that at the next council meeting that we have a little blurb on our successful water grant that we got? Just so we can do a little one-pager on it. And,
yes, for sure.
Yeah, no, I think we'll do a little one-pager on it, the next one, if you don't mind.
And we do have one question that's come in.
Okay.
Here we go. It's from Nora O'Malley of the Black Press Media. And she just asks a question about the draft OCP public hearing. Hi, Joey. Has a date been set for this? And I think the answer to that is no, a date has not been set for this at this point.
Okay. So no questions via Zoom or other emails?
Further questions on Zoom or via email.
Okay, thanks, Paula. Okay, I'll move that the meeting be closed to the public in order to address agenda items under section 91C and E and K of the Community Charter related to labor relations and other employee relations, the acquisition, disposition, and expropriation of land or improvements. If the council considers that disclosure could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality, and negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of municipal service that are at the preliminary stages, and that, in the view of council, could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the municipality if they were held in public.
Second.
All in favor? Okay. Oh, carried. So we'll take another little one. We're going to close this and go into in camera. Man. And that was